Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng ZHu speaking, and we are at episode 101. We're finally broken through 100. So thank you, everyone, for the support and all the great message you guys left on episode 100. It was really cool to see some of the messages mentioning that you switched careers because of Design Cinema, or you found out about concept art for the first time because of Design Cinema. So all that stuff is very positive, and it gives me a lot of energy to continue producing these for all of you. So let's jump into 101. So because it's episode 101, I thought, hey, let's go back to the basics. Let's reset a lot of stuff that we've done in the past and kind of revisit the easiest and the most fundamental steps it takes to break into this business. And part of the reason I wanted to do that is because the last 3-4 years, I've seen a lot of portfolios, especially those who are younger, say in the early teens or late teens to early 20s, that are interested in this industry and are doing some, practices and building some portfolios to try to break in. However, about 99% of these are really bad. These portfolios are completely lacking in fundamentals, structures, basically anything that are good for learning, they're skipping. They're doing everything that's kind of bad for learning and hoping that somehow magically they'll become good and work on these AAA games and films. Well, that's not going to happen. This industry is pretty hard for those who follow us for a long time. You've seen all the things we covered. You have to, if you're learning, you have to do these things in baby steps. So today, let's focus on the basics of just sketching. Okay, so I prepared a bunch of PSD files here, a bunch of layers, and let's go through them. And then at the end of the episode, I'll actually do some live, just quick sketches to show you guys how to warm up to this, right? So this whole episode is about sketching, the most fundamental thing to this business, right? Before you do painting, before you do any of that, let's just sketch. Now, I'm not even talking about drawing. I'm talking about sketching. Sketching was a lot more loose. It's more free flow, right? Just get your hands warmed up. So the first thing is, here are the things I see in those 99% of the portfolios, right? Here are the things to avoid when you are learning the basics. Once you have all the fundamentals down, once you start to produce pretty good work, then yeah, all this stuff comes in. But when you're just starting out, that you don't even know how to draw well yet, these are things to avoid because I see them the most in these portfolios, okay? So let me reveal them one by one here. First one, speed paintings. This is just the most topic I ever see in these portfolios. You see horrible speed paintings done usually probably, I'm guessing, within a half an hour to an hour. Totally impatient, totally rushing, no good content, just really just junk stuff. It's like just blah, 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 a bunch of paint marks. You could tell this person is just doing it really quick because they think speed painting is about speed. Speed paintings that once are done well are done by the pros. The reason why they could do it fast is because they got 20 or 30 years experience behind them. So for every brush mark they put down, every line they draw in, that contains 20 years of experience. Therefore, they can make it fast, okay? But when a student gets their hands on a speed painting, they think speed is the only thing they focus on, but they have zero experience doing it. So the result is just horrible. You cannot skip 20 years experience and try to catch up to some pro who's been doing it for 30 years. So speed paintings, unfortunately, is a big thing that a lot of younger kids tend to do, and the results are horrible. It doesn't train you to do anything. Okay, next one. Photo bashing, which is generally related to speed painting, because either they're painting it by hand or they're using a bunch of photographs. And this photo bash is even uglier when you don't have fundamentals because they're using photos that are shot with different lenses. There's zero perspective on anything, no anatomy. There's different texture densities. Just talk about, anything under the sun is under these things. And it's horrendous. They're ugly looking, they're really bad, and they're just completely anti-learning. There's probably the worst thing you could do when you're in the beginning stages of learning, which is to use photo bash, because it skips everything and it's not going to make you any better. Okay, let's go next one. Okay, avoiding fundamentals. Okay, so those two I just mentioned, the top, speed painting and photo bash. And the reason why a lot of younger kids are doing it is because they don't want to do the hard stuff, right? They want to do the things that look like what the pros do, but they want to skip all the training that the pros have went under, right? The pros have trained for 20, 30 years. That's why they could do the above two subjects really well. If you want to skip it, then you're not going to catch up to them probably ever. You're just wasting your time. So avoiding fundamentals is throughout these portfolios. You could tell that they're not putting any effort in it. Right? It's kind of like working out in the gym You see some people, they get on the treadmill and they basically on walking speed and do it for like 3 minutes and they get off the machine. Like you're doing something, I guess, but it's not going to train you to do anything. It's not going to make you healthier. It's not going to make you more strong. It's not going to build stamina. It's the same thing as doing a speed painting or photo bash. You're kind of experimenting using the same tools and techniques that we are using, but you're not doing it in the hard way. You're not putting any effort into this stuff. You're not sweating over it. You're not frustrated over it. You're just like la la la, right? And you're walking on a treadmill at speed 1 for 3 minutes, right? Does it help? I guess. Is it going to make you better and stronger? Probably not, So that's the same thing as fundamentals, that if you're doing something really hard and it's frustrating and it's taking forever, you're probably doing something correct, okay? All right, let me check the time here. Okay. Next one here. Make your own IP. So all those 3 things I mentioned above, they're doing, but yet they want to make their own IP, right? Instead of taking something from the real world and learn something one at a time, right? Take a subject matter that's already been designed, like history stuff or any kind of thing from nature, right? And just draw that or paint it. But instead, it's like, I got to make my own IP, right? I don't have any fundamental skills. I don't have any design skills. I don't have anything, but I got to make my own IP. Meanwhile, studios, our AAA studios have 30, 40, 50 concept artists, right? Like a place like Disney have 50, 70 concept artists making a single film. And they're making an IP, and you're one person with 0 skills. You try to make your own IP, but that's what happens all the time. It's kind of interesting to see at these portfolio reviews. Like 9 out of 10 people, when they open their portfolios, like, yeah, I'm making my own IP, and you're just going, man, focus on drawing first, or focus on some painting. Do that stuff first before you jump into this huge epic thing, which is the next one here, right? If they're not doing their own IP, they're picking some epic subject matter. Let me get a pen here, okay? That means the subjects that the pros are doing, right? Establishing a new landscape, designing a character from scratch, right? These are epic subjects that pros tend to do in studios. As a student, or not even a student, if you're just jumping in for the first time, do something easy, do something basic, do it right first before you jump to these crazy, insanely difficult subject matters. But unfortunately, a lot of kids fall into this category. Like you look at it, it's like, man, you're pulling off something that even pros have a hard time doing, but yet you're trying to do it. So, I mean, it's good that you're trying, but the result is not the best way to learn. It's slow, it's frustrating, and it's not the proper way to learn the basics, okay? Let's keep going here. Wait, where's my thingy go? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Okay. Not using real world references, right? So all the things above equals this one here. They refuse to use real references. In fact, some of the students seem proud. They'll get in line, they'll show me their work and go, yeah, I did all this without reference. And for us professionals, we're like, yeah, it looks like it because it's horrible. You have no understanding of anything. You're just making everything up. Versus pros, every pro, as far as I know, all my friends and all the pros in the industry, we use as much references as possibly can because there's no way you can memorize everything you're ahead, right? So the world is huge. There's so much content. So by supplementing your designs with references, it's going to make your stuff more believable. It's going to make your stuff look better. It's going to give you details, all sorts of positive benefits from using references. And yet students, or those who are learning, is so proud to not use references. Like, I made up everything. I made up all the clothing. I made up everything. And it's like, yeah, it looks like it because it's so bad, right? So don't do that. Okay. And the last one here is immature content, right? This tends to be things like drawing wargs and elves, or just some pretty girls sitting under a waterfall. This kind of stuff is not for the industry we're in. Now, if you want to become an illustrator and paint really epic paintings and do, say, Magic the Gathering cards and this kind of stuff, sure, that stuff will definitely help you because that stuff is mostly illustration based. The industry that I'm in and what I'm focusing these design cinemas on is for concept design. Our job is to create products. Okay, the drawing is a very small part of it. It's just a communication tool. That is it. The end result is the idea, the product, and this product has to sell. It has to sell to millions of people, possibly, right? So from video games to films, they're all commercial products. So the painting you're doing is not going to be the main selling point at all. In fact, nobody cares. So if your content is just derivative content or things that have no selling point, for example, is just some person standing under a tree and something you've seen a million times, it's not good. Or you're doing designs that are completely driven by the last video games you played. So it comes out very immature. It makes your imagination seem like you're about 16 or 18, somewhere around that age group. And they're not going to let a teen or kind of multi-billion-dollar IP like all the AAA games out there and films. So your content has to be mature. Okay, so let's just review these things, right? These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these 7 things are something I see the most in early student portfolios. So try to avoid it. Instead, take it one small step at a time and just draw, which is my next slide over here. Okay, start with just sketching. Learn how to do good line art first before you jump into all the things I mentioned earlier. Okay, forget the digital paintings and the photo bash, these epic things. Let's just draw. And even here, these are demos I've done for my students. These subject matters are already too hard. Today, let's just go back to the easiest stuff to draw. Okay, so that comes to my next slide. Difficulty. All right. So I'm going to create a little bar here because it's kind of important for those of you who have never drawn much before to understand that drawing is not a fair thing. Okay, there are very easy things to draw and there are very difficult things to draw. And I want to explain what those differences are. Okay, so on the left here, we have easy. On the right, obviously, we have difficult. So what is the general barrier between the two? Okay, in my opinion, something that's easy is generally something that gives you a large margin of error. You can make mistakes and nobody knows. The further you go to the right here, then the littlest mistakes is going to show. And this impacts your drawing and early sketching greatly. So what you want to do is you want to pick subject matters that are easy. So if you mess up, even if you mess up like 40%, sometimes up to 50%, it still looks good. That's going to build confidence. That's going to give you the drive to keep going forward. And you definitely don't want to start with something that's extremely difficult over here. So the smallest mistake, it looks bad. And unfortunately, a lot of students generally start here. They pick subject matters that are just so hard and they probably draw for half an hour, get frustrated and give up. Versus, let's go here. And as we show these images to you, I'll explain to you why they're easy. Okay, so in the first column here, the easiest, bam. Okay, so what are these things? Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, so we have spiky rocky mountains, right? This landscape looks exactly like that game that's coming out called, what is it, Death Stranding, right? Very similar. I'm sure they reference these particular areas. I think it's like in Scotland or somewhere else. Very cool spiky mountains. We have insects, skeletons, right? Roots, destroyed post-apocalyptic kind of environments here. Loose clothing. That means these clothing are not tight-fitting on the character. And just pretty cool vehicles like trains and classic cars and so forth. So why are these subjects easier? The reason is because, one, they're mostly organic. They're prone to imprecise lines on their own. That's one. Okay, for example, if you look at this spiky mountain over here, right? Nothing here is a straight line. There's no 90 degrees and so forth. By having this organicness to these subject matters, you could kind of make perspective mistakes. And it's not going to show up greatly, okay? The other one is these are things that we commonly are not very much familiar with on a daily basis. We kind of know what a bug looks like. We kind of know what a tree looks like, but it's not something you see every day. So therefore, the mistakes you make are not easily picked up by others looking at your work. And therefore, these subject matters here are much easier to draw. And if you look at production of games and films, if something is easy for you to do, most likely it is cheaper to produce for the final product. So if something that's really hard for the concept artist to do, like it takes you a lot of time just to concept it and to make it look good, most likely it's going to be very expensive and time consuming to make for the final product. Okay, it generally goes like that. That's why you see a lot of post-apocalyptic zombie games, right? Because they use this type of thing, right? Imagine you make a mistake drawing and your chair slightly out of perspective or your lines kind of wiggly. Doesn't matter. You just call that's part of the environment. It's fine. So if you're making this into a 3D asset, you can make the same kind of mistakes where you could kind of make sure that the geometry kind of wiggle a little bit. You could texture kind of blend a little bit. It's easy to hide mistakes because the mistakes is part of the flavor of the subject matter, right? Same with loose clothing. If your anatomy is not so good, fine. It's okay. We hide the anatomy under the loose clothing, right? You don't have to get it to be perfect. Things like trains. If you move this thing back a little bit, move the things forward a little bit, nobody knows because nobody really knows what a train looks like. Not this particular model, right? There's thousands of these things on the earth, and most of us are not that familiar enough to know if something is wrong or not. So you can mess with proportions and still make the drawing look good, right? So this is some of the easiest thing you could draw, and I'd recommend if you're just drawing for the first time, start here, which we'll do today. All right, let me grab a coffee here. All right, next. Easy part 2. Okay, now we're getting into some geometric things and something that requires discipline. However, they're still not that hard because these things still are prone to error. Like you can make errors on them and it's not going to be that bad. Obviously, a castle, you have to start plotting out the perspective. But if you mess up a little bit, it's okay, right? These buildings are pretty precisely built, but there are margins in there. It's not as precise as something we'll see later on, okay? Like farmhouses, interiors of history, right? And animals that we know, but yet are not something we see every day, like elephants, rhinos, lizards, and alligators, right? Nobody lives with these things on a daily basis. So if you mess up on the elephant's ear a little bit, like it's a little small, a little big, the eyes a little bit lower, a little bit higher, most people are not going to know. So as you draw these, you have a lot more freedom to kind of enjoy the sketching process and not worry that you are going to screw up. Okay, so here are the easiest and here are the easy. So these are all things that I recommend you to try, or these kind of subject matters, if you never drawn before. Use these subjects and don't make anything up. Draw from reference, okay, which we'll do today. All right, so let's move on to the medium difficulty stuff. Boom. All right, now getting to things that are a little hard now, okay? This is something you don't want to be sketching early on because these subject matters are pretty tricky, okay? For example, one of them would be very tight architecture, interiors as well as exteriors. So basically modern things, stuff that's built today or even from anywhere from probably the 1930s, 1940s forward, your architecture becomes a lot more precise. They're using metals now, they're using glass. When this material comes in, the precision and the margin of error, is going to be very, very small. So if you're sketching this office interior, for example, your perspective has to be dead on. So if you're not really familiar with the fundamentals at this point, especially with perspective, drawing this is quite difficult. And this is what students avoid, right? Most students don't draw this kind of stuff because it's hard, so they just give up. So here, for example, same, organic twists in geometric forms are really difficult. Like the staircase here, nowadays we'll probably build this in 3D because sketching this is almost impossible. Like a DNA helix, to draw that precisely, it's really, really hard. Okay, a loose sketch maybe, but you're gonna make it pretty precise. It's pretty hard. So things like that are getting pretty tricky. I put a little house cat here. The reason for that is like, what's the difference between a house cat and an elephant? Right? They're both mammals and they're both animals. You know, what's the difference? The reason why cats, dogs, these kind of animals are hard is because now we are in a territory in which we see these animals all the time. You make a mistake on a cat, like you put the ears down here, okay, you put the eyes like a little bit lower, everyone's gonna look at it and go, hey, something's not right. This cat doesn't look right, right? You can make huge margins of errors on elephants. I'm sure you could put the teeth like way lower and most people will even catch it. Right? I did this in the past before in one of my episodes in which we took a rhino and moved the eyeballs around. Like you can't tell, it all looks correct. Even to me, I've been doing this for a long time and it still looks kind of correct. It's like you move the eye like basically 20, 30% off to the left, to the right, to the bottom, and it looks correct. But you can't do that with cats and dogs because we're so used to the way they look that you mess with their forms, something gets off, right? So for these kind of subject matters, now I gotta be careful because the margin of error is now smaller and smaller. Down here, this is related to the upper area here, this architecture, right? Precision built products gets much harder to do than imprecise things. For example, you go back to medieval times and draw like a shield, right, that has dents in it and it's kind of all handmade. You can make small mistakes in it and it's kind of fine because the tolerances are organic, right? They're not super tight. You do something like an iPhone, while the tolerances here are laser tight, right? These are milled by very precise machines. So if you're sketching something like this, you got to be pretty careful with these sketches. Otherwise, it just looks off. It's going to look like an imitation of, for example, an iPhone than the real iPhone because these companies spend a lot of time making sure these tolerances in here and this spacing, for example, this little I'm not sure what that little thing is there. That little marker here is precisely in the middle, right? Everything is measured. All these little tolerances, the curvatures, is all designed. So when you're drawing this, you have to be quite spot on with these tolerances as well, or it comes off bad. So this is getting to pretty difficult subjects here. Now let's get into hard. Boom. All right. So now we're dealing with the human figure, okay? The human body is one of the hardest things to draw correctly, especially a human body in motion, because this is something we are used to seeing the minute you are born. So say you're 18 years old, now you have 18 years of looking at human beings. So the smallest imperfections, like someone walking with a slight limp, right? The smallest limb, you could catch that from a very far distance, right? Like I mentioned in the past, you can recognize your friends simply by the way they walk. So that's how well trained your eyes are. So any kind of human in tight clothing, right? That means their anatomy start to show. Any motion is one of the hardest things to draw. The good thing is, in the line of work that we do as concept designers, we rarely have to do this. Human beings to us, we don't have to design because they exist anyways. Generally, we're doing clothing, and in the real concept world of mass production concept art, most times clothing is done straight up front view or kind of a slight 3/4 view. They don't have that much perspective on them because it's meant to show off the design. So that's a good thing about being an industrial concept designer, is that we don't deal with human beings that much. Most of the time, say you're on a movie, they'll just give you the photograph of the actor and just draw right on top. So this is more important if you're an illustrator and you're doing, say, the Magic the Gathering cards, in which you have to pose characters and get them into action. Then you have to focus on that. But that is not our industry, which I mentioned in the past. That is the illustrative industry. In the business we're in, we could pretty generally avoid the subject in most cases. Most industrial designers cannot draw human beings. There's a very small percent that can, because it is so hard. So same thing with, say, a horse. A horse and a cat are very similar, in which horses are featured a lot in entertainment. So we also know when a horse looks kind of off, right? You move the eyeballs, you can tell it's kind of off. So horses are just as hard. So a human being on a horse in motion, really hard to do. So I remember that game Assassin's Creed 2, or is it 3? They had horses in it, and the developers were mentioning how hard that was to do. So horses are still very, very hard to do in movies, like to animate a digital horse, really tricky. So anyways, this is getting to the very difficult. The last thing here, the hardest stuff, in my opinion, to draw, to sketch, are precision, precision man-made objects, similar to the iPhone down here, but here we have like a sports car or a jet or anything that has organic curves but precision curves. So this thing here is really hard to draw. This is the 8 Series BMW, right? Try to sketch that unless you went to industrial design school and drew a lot of cars. This thing here is really hard to pull off for younger kids. And also, of course, human face, right? So I put Chris Hemsworth here, is that Thor, right? Human faces is similar to human bodies, but even more precise, because we generally look at people's faces first before we look at the rest of the forms. So to draw a human being, you have to be very, very precise. The pupil is off just by a tiny bit. The nose shifted a little bit, the eyebrow shifted. You can either make this person have a weird gesture or emotion, or look like they're dead, or they're having a lazy eye. Really hard to do. And that's why in the world of CG, to make a fake human being is really hard to pull off. Even some of the best stuff out there right now, you can still kind of catch that's not quite right. It's always like that, got that uncanny valley look to it, right? Like they look like zombies. So because the human face has hundreds of muscles in it, a tiny little tweak makes this human have a different reaction, like they're confused or they're angry, they're kind of suspicious, right? Tiny movements. But you're not going to catch that on an elephant, right? So that's why movies like The Lion King and Jungle Book, right, that features animals, they have to really exaggerate those features for you to read what they're doing. But I'm sure a lion to another lion, they could read these small muscles too, but that's not us. We're not the same species, so we cannot read their little tiny gestures that they're doing, but we can for human beings. So drawing human faces nicely is really hard. But going back to what I mentioned earlier, most of the time, we never have to do this in this business because we don't have to design the actor's face. All we got to do is design whatever they're wearing, their helmets, their earpiece, whatever that is, and all the stuff that goes on top of the human being. So as a concept designer, we could pretty much escape this stuff in most cases. So if you look at this chart as a whole here, okay, if you look at it from left to right, look at the easiest produced and the cheapest stuff is on the left and the most expensive out here. And that's why science fiction movies and games are the most expensive things to make. They're the most riskiest things to make as well because they're hard to produce. You cannot make mistakes. Everything has to look polished. Everything has to look precise. So, and that's why a lot of indie games, especially if they're not going for say a stylized look, a lot of early games, they tend to go zombie, they tend to go destroy, post-apocalyptic, because it's a little bit cheaper to produce, right? The hardest stuff is making this type of thing, like big battle suits and really slick armor, all high-tech, futuristic. It's like kind of like this BMW here, right? And put realistic humans inside those suits. That gets really, really hard. Okay, so knowing that, today, let's start with the basics. And I decided to choose these roots. Really fun to draw, huge tolerance for mistakes. You can make like 50% mistakes and nothing happens, okay? So here are some examples. Okay, so I went on Google and gathered a bunch of tree roots. Look how cool these things are, right? They're awesome. I hope that you look at this and get inspired. Because if you look at this and go, nah, this is boring, man. I just want to draw really cool stuff from Blizzard. I want to draw big works, or I want to draw stuff from BioWare. Well, if that's what you want to do, your mindset's really not in the right place yet. Okay, as a creative person, you gotta find these shapes interesting. Because when I look at this, I'm like, this is beautiful stuff. I want to draw this right now. So I hope you have that, because a lot of the younger kids, I look at their portfolio, it's almost hard to tell if they like drawing, right? It looks like they're just trying to rush so they can work in a game studio, but they don't actually like the process itself. Well, unfortunately, if you don't like the process, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be in the industry if you hate doing drawing and painting. You're going to have to love this and find things like this interesting. Okay, so here are just images I found on Google. Look how cool they are. So here's another one over here as well. Okay, look at this kind of stuff. Look at the one up here. That is just some beautiful stuff. And there's no difference between this and a piece of concept art. You could actually just put this directly in a video game and it's pretty awesome. You put this in some kind of RPG game that you walk under in a town. Beautiful. You could model it exactly as is and it'll sell 100%. It is cool, okay? So don't forget about nature and all these things that exist. Look at this stuff. It's just beautiful stuff, okay? Now, let's get into the actual drawing part. Let's give you guys some tips here, okay? So go back to the first one. All right. So the first thing I generally do is when I look at this, right? Because let's just slow it down a bit. Okay, we're gonna go into the drawing phase now. We talked about the difficulty of drawings. We talked about starting with basics. Now let's actually talk about drawing this. So let me slow it down by drinking some coffee as well. All right, slow down. First thing to do is see where the horizon line is. Okay, so this has to do with fundamentals of perspective. Now I just make the very easy one. Forget the vanishing points, VP1, VP2, and all that kind of stuff. Just mark a horizon, okay? And you could kind of just estimate this. You don't have to be super precise either. Just know when you're looking up, when you're looking down. Horizon is basically your eye level, okay? Where was this photo taken in terms of the camera position with the photographer's eyes, okay? So here I used a red mark to mark, I'm guessing where it is. It's probably off a little bit here and there, but like I said, it doesn't matter. You could just be kind of in the right zone. For example, if you look at this photo here, the photographer's camera is probably somewhere here. It could be as high as here. It's somewhere in this range, right? But it's definitely not up here because I could start looking up at this point. Now we want to know horizon line. That way when we start to sketch, you kind of have an idea of how this object sits in 3D space. But because it is a root, there's these branches, we could still be off. And that's why this subject matter is so easy to do, right? But here you could clearly tell that we're looking down here as these roots go towards camera. And as we look away, it starts to go up, right? And look at the trees in the background, they're going up now. So the horizon to be somewhere over here, right? Same with all this. This one, the horizon is actually quite low. Everything here we're looking up. You can see the bottom of these rocks already. So we are below this, this formation here, okay? So that's the first thing to do. It's just kind of mark where the horizon line is, be aware of it so you don't start drawing into a flat zone. Everything that exists on this planet exists in some kind of three-dimensional space. So especially these objects like this, right? So you want to be conscious of these forms. Next, once you have the horizon, is kind of see the bigger picture, okay? What's the volume these shapes take up? Don't just start drawing details. Okay, start drawing the overall mass first. Get the overall silhouette and the overall form. And you don't have to be precise, which I'll mention in a bit as we start looking at the drawing itself. We just want to get the overall mass. Okay, let's look at the other one here. Same thing here. Find the horizon line. Just roughly estimate where it is at. So you know when you're looking up. All right, here's the blue line. When you're looking up, when you're looking down, up, down. So this one here, that's crossing this little two walls here. It's very evident that we're below this tree, right? Because that's where the photo's taken. So knowing that, we know that this tree is completely above us. Okay. Next, big forms, okay? So here I used a silhouette to outline where the form actually sits. So that way when you're sketching, you're aware of the first stage you need to do, which is capture this, whatever I have marked out here in this purple light pink color. Get that down first. Don't start drawing the tiny little details. It doesn't matter at this point because you want to focus on big to small, okay? Now, let's actually take these and draw it. Okay, so here are my tips. Boom. Okay, first, let me get my pen here. I kind of just made this branch up, right? We're not referencing anything at this point. It's just made up some random branches. Okay, so the first tip is get the overall form first. Don't focus on details, just get the overall. There's no line weights or anything at this point. It's just kind of roughly get it in there. And here's some tips for the initial drawing. Okay, you want to relax your arm and let your lines flow, like this sketch here. If you're just starting out, don't worry if this line looks good or not. Don't worry about it. This is going to take time, okay? Let's say at least 6 months to a year before you get comfortable. So you don't expect good results on your first day trying this, okay? It's going to take a while. But it's good to be in a good habit of being loose with your arms. So you're drawing with your elbow, okay? You're not drawing with your wrist. So that's why after so many years of doing this, I have no carpal tunnel or anything like that because I'm using the elbow muscles. This muscle is much, much bigger than the one you have in your wrist. So I'm not moving my arm like this. I'm moving my entire elbow and get everything forward here. I'm pivoting on this. So by doing that, for example, here, right, you can see this line is very fluid. If I do this with my wrist, this is done with my wrist right here. Okay, I move my wrist left and right. Okay, this is moving my elbow. Okay, wrist staying still. This line here is a lot more fluid. It doesn't make my arm get painful because you're moving a major muscle group here. So, and it helps you just kind of keep everything nice and fluid. And that's the way I recommend to draw as well, right? Avoid drawing with the wrist, except for very small details. I rarely move my wrist. And you definitely want to avoid this as well, which is kind of this dead lines. Okay, all the lines are the same length. You're drawing very stiff, like right? This is pretty ugly, and that's not sketching anymore. Now you're just making a sticker. Okay, so try to avoid drawing this. Looser in the beginning, but drawing a lot will automatically make you precise over time. So if you practice drawing this way, you draw another 1,000 drawings, 2,000 drawings. Okay, I'm not kidding. Literally 1,000 drawings, literally 2,000 drawings. When you get to that kind of mileage, you're gonna automatically start to get more precise. If you do this from day one, even after 1,000 images, you might actually get worse. Your drawings tend to look too tight and you're gonna have a hard time loosening up. So it's better to start a little bit more loose, a little bit more fluid, and then let itself get tighter and tighter over time. Okay, so that's step one, get the overall. Step two. Okay, now we focus on line weight. So here are my tips for where to add line weight. Okay, so let's zoom in now here. So these are general tips for line weight. Okay, one is areas of shadow. Okay, we are doing a line drawing, so we don't have rendering or anything like that. But in general, the shadow is going to fall towards the bottom. Okay, in most cases, the sun is above us. We're pretty used to seeing things light above, dark on the bottom. So on the bottoms of these shapes, you could tend to kind of indicate where the shadow is going to turn in, or the form is going to go into shadow. And I tend to add a little bit of line weight in those areas. That's one. The other one is areas of form overlap. For example, this form here is going over this line here. So here is an overlap. So we tend to make the line weight a little bit darker in any areas in which one form is overlapping another. So for example, here, we're seeing it here as well. So this branch is in front of this branch. So we made this line slightly darker. But notice this tapered off line. We don't want to make this whole thing, like for example, we don't want to make this whole thing dark. We want to taper it off. So this area here is where the overlap is happening. Over here, there's no overlap. Hold on a second, let me change my pen to red again. Over here, there are no overlaps, so I don't need to make the line super thick because there's nothing the lines are fighting against, okay? So this is generally what I'm putting that. Let's go next one. Corners and creases. So this is similar to areas of shadow in which two forms are starting to turn a corner or just starting to crease together. So let's look for example of that. So for example here, this is a corner, a V shape here. This is another corner. And let's see, this is a shape here that's twisting. So this is related to shadow, sometimes also related to screen space occlusion, right? So if you play video games, you've seen the ambient occlusion like SSAO, right? Similar effect in which when a shape is going into another shape, you tend to have an area of darkness, right? So in video games, they refer that as ambient or space occlusion, right? Or ambient space occlusion or something like that, SSAO. Okay, so we can indicate with line weight as well. Another one is areas with weight. Okay, so this is literally like a physical weight. If this thing is heavy, for example, a box. Okay, right now this drawing with the same line weight, right? But a box is heavy towards the bottom, so we can make this line a little darker, and it kind of just gives it a visual weight. So say a window frame. Here's a window frame, right? With the frames here. Boom, boom. Now, if I put on the bottom one that serves as a shadow, it also serves as the weight of this object. It tends to go to the bottom. So here's how this windowsill will be drawn if it's a straight front view. Okay, so that's it. So that's the line weight. And this kind of stuff you can actually see on blueprints of architect drawings. They actually indicate line weight sometimes. These really nicely drawn blueprints, especially look back to some of the early blueprints from the 1800s. Really beautifully done because they'll put line weight into it, and it covers pretty much everything here. Okay, and the last one here is start with the focal point. Okay, so I indicated here what the focal point means. That means the area you want the viewer to see first, and we expand that out. You don't want this line weight to be everywhere because it creates too much of a random focus. So in this case, because it's a branch, I want the focal point to be sort of in the middle here and kind of go down to the bottom and a little bit on the top here and kind of just soften out. Okay, so notice on the edges here, all the lines here are essentially the initial sketch here. Nothing's changed because I want to keep these light throughout the entire sketch. I'll never touch them again. The area of focus is always here, and this is where the detail is going to come in as well in the second stage there. Okay, so next one, let's start. Blink. Okay, now we're starting to put some contour lines and details. Okay, so let's just review here. So that's the first stage, second stage, line weight, third stage, detail and contour. So contour lines, which I put here, these curved lines, they're not necessarily on the original reference. Well, in this case, there is no reference, I just made it up. So contour lines are generally lines are indicating the form turns. So in this case, because they're round branches, I'm putting a lot of contour lines here. So the form's trying to read. Keep this in mind. Our job is to communicate a design. Our job is to communicate using a drawing. The end result is not this. This is just a communication tool. So oftentimes, for example, if this is going to go to the next person in line, which is a 3D modeler, they have to understand what's going on in your forms. So here, for example, if I just give this to a 3D modeler, they could kind of model it, but they're not going to really see clearly what's happening here. With the contour lines added, now this form here starts to have dimensional space, simply due to the contour lines we added. So contour lines are there to help describe form. So again, they're not necessarily on the reference image themselves. I'm adding it on my own. So you could do this with animals, you could do it with products. Like oftentimes, for example, if they're drawing, say, the iPhone we talked about earlier, right? If you just leave it like this, it's very hard to read. This looks like a cracker, it's flat. But if you add a contour line here, all of a sudden we have a radius corner, which is here. Okay, so this is something oftentimes you see on product drawings in which they'll indicate using a contour. And in most cases, the 3D modelers know the difference between a contour and a non-contour. We call a form line versus a contour line or a cut line. Okay, so these things are getting a little complicated. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, the difference between, say, cut, form, and contour. Actually, contour and form lines are pretty similar. Say a cut line is actually something different. Say a seam on a car's door. That is a physical cut line that exists on the product itself, versus contour lines might not exist. It just shows how the car door is formed. So we'll get to that later. But contour lines help to add some details, and it just kind of makes everything look kind of nice, okay? It adds that extra level of finish, okay? And the last one here, boom, okay, is that we finish this sketch with some light marker. And notice the marker is also going the same direction as my focal point, right? It tends to kind of expand from the bottom outwards. So the darkest area is here, and it gets lighter and lighter until it kind of just disappears off, okay? And I'm still using the same technique I used 20-something years ago using traditional markers, which I'll show you guys in the next sketch there. Using the same concept, which is starting with something very light, like a light gray, 10%, 15%, and slowly build it up. So what you could do is you can actually Photoshop, pick a gray that's about, I could do it here, just show you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna pick a gray at 50%, okay? But I set my opacity to just 30%. So that way I could go in there and draw like this. And then if I want it to be darker, I just simply go on top of it because my opacity is only at 30%, right? Up there, I don't know if you guys can see, it's 30%. So I could keep building this up, and this works almost exactly like how real markers work on paper. Okay, so you can keep building this up. If I keep going here, ultimately I get to about 50% gray, which is here, down here, right? So this is how I'm doing these washes as well. That's why I can see band lines in here, meaning that you can see the seam lines, right? So you can see it all through here. You can see there. There's a V right here. But it doesn't matter. You'll see this in the real markers as well. When you look at Prisma marker renderings, you catch it. And it kind of adds to the overall texture. If it's too smooth, like an airbrush, it actually makes the sketch a little bit fuzzy, in my opinion. So I like to have the marker lines show up a little bit. So they're everywhere here. You can see it here. Right? It's kind of part of the style of this industrial-like style that goes back to the 1970s and probably even earlier. So if you go back to the 1970s Star Wars drawings by Joe Johnston and Ralph McCurry and all these classic concept artists from back in the days, you can actually see this technique hasn't changed much in the last 40, 50 years. Okay, all right. Let's go next one. So that's the tip. One more note on focal point. Okay, so if you have a question on focal point, in this case, this is not a living thing. I mean, it is a living thing, it's a plant, but it doesn't have any living features like eyeballs and nose and stuff like that. So my focal point, I tend to just kind of choose a spot and let it be there. Now, anything living, like anything from a bug to a fish to a human being, the face is always going to be the focal point. So that's where you start most of your details out and your line weights. It all goes from the face and radiate out. So on the bug, it's going to be the little compound eyes, the mouth, and all the little front legs, and then kind of just expands outwards. Okay, for a human being, obviously, it's the face area and goes back all the way down. So your feet is generally the least concern of line weight and detail. So it's all around the eyes, the nose, and so forth. Okay, let's take that concept and go into our little sketch demo here. Boom. So let's draw this guy, okay? And you guys, I'll put all this on a blog somewhere after I'm done with Design Cinema, so you can find these references. So you don't have to find it yourself. You can just use these ones. They're great. You can use them, and they're all just from Google image search. Okay, so let me give you some tips on this before we actually draw it. Boom. All right. First, here's our goal, okay? First thing is we're not doing a one-to-one copy. This is pretty important to understand here, okay? The goal here is not to just draw everything perfectly, exactly like a photo reel, match everything perfectly. That's not the point. The point here is to loosen up your arms and your wrists to learn how to draw and how to sketch, to fall into this zone of comfort as you get into more difficult things, right? It's kind of like going back to that training thing that in the gym, right? So we don't want you to be walking at speed 1 for 3 minutes. That's not gonna do much. What we want you to do is have a small run. So let's say 10 minutes at speed 5. So you're getting a small sweat, but it's not the best workout. It's not the most intense, but you're getting into it, right? And your footsteps could be off a little bit. You don't have to be super precise. Maybe your movements are a little bit off. It's fine. Same thing with doing a sketch. If you're doing a one-to-one copy, you're actually using a lot of time in areas that's not that important for sketching. Excuse me. So what we want to do is capture the overall form, but you could be off, way off, and it's okay. And that's why we chose the roots, right? And that's why we didn't choose Thor, the Chris Hemsworth guy, because that kind of drawing, you got to be super precise. You have to do a one-to-one copy where the human being don't look right? It's gonna look like an off version, like his long lost brother or something like that. So that's why we choose these easy subjects. Okay. Next, we're learning to relax, which I mentioned about. We want your muscles, your arms to just get used to sketching. Okay. Have that kind of relax. I have my coffee. It's a nice day. I'm just kind of free flowing. You don't want to be sitting all tight and like this. I remember learning how to fly my airplanes a long time ago. You sit in the cockpit. Generally, the teacher knows if you have a lot of experience by simply how your hands hold the yoke of the airplane. So you look at the pros, they're kind of gently holding the plane. They want the plane to fly. So sometimes they're flying with the pinky on the yoke, just super gentle moving the plane. Versus students who are like grabbing the yoke, like going to squeeze it to death because we're nervous. We're thinking, it's going to crash, right? But the more confidence you gain, the more you start to trust the airplane and you start flying it just by touching or making minor adjustments. So same thing here. The early stages of drawing, you tend to see that they're grabbing the Wacom super tight. Everything here is starting to hurt, right? Versus pros, it's just like la 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 la. Like I'm barely holding my pen on the Wacom. Later, I'll show you guys a little bit of the my settings in Photoshop as well as Wacom, so you guys can see what I'm using to draw. Because again, I don't have any pain in my wrist. I don't have any health issues with my arm, even though I've been drawing for a long time. So if you count my kid days, we're talking about 35 years or something of drawing, and I don't have any carpal tunnel. And that has to do with the way you sketch. You have to do this correctly. Okay, let's do this. Okay, next one, learning line control and flow. So these two are related. And we're not getting confidence. And that's why, again, we're choosing this kind of subject matter. You could draw this, have fun, and gain a lot of confidence versus trying to draw Thor and mess up and go, screw this, man. This is way too hard, right? Don't start drawing Captain America and Thor and everybody. Let's start with something simpler so you gain confidence and be happy. And most important. You gotta have fun. Okay. So when I was doing this episode, finding these references, man, I was totally into it. And I'll give you some tips on how to do that as well. It just shows you how much I love this industry. This stuff is fun. I got work to do. I got all these things I got to work on. But when I'm doing this, I'm like, dude, this is fun. This is why I'm doing this, right? So, anyways, all right, here's some more tips here. So one of the things I do a lot is even as a kid, I've been doing this. Is to pretend, give yourself a role. You guys all play RPG games, right? So when I was drawing these drawings, I just pretended that I was like an illustrator or some kind of artist in an ancient video game, or where Lois and Clark back when they were exploring America. Right? Put yourself in that role and just have fun with it. Versus like, oh, I'm a student and this is for homework and this is so painful, I gotta draw. So imagine you're on on James Cook. Is it James Cook, that the captain, right? Imagine like he hired you to be on the voyage for the next 2-3 years to draw all the plants of all the new islands you discovered, right? Where say Lois and Clark going across America, going through the Blue Ridge Mountains and Colorado Rocky Mountains, and documenting the landscape and stuff. Just pretend doing that. How fun is that, right? Got your backpack, you got your camping equipment, and you have a little sketchbook, and you're just capturing the nature. So that's what I did when I was drawing these. Just pretended I was one of those characters, okay? Next, don't do this for social media. Please don't have a goal of, I cannot wait to finish this. I could put on Facebook and get a bunch of likes. I mentioned this numerous times. Don't do this for social media. This is for you. The better you become in this industry, the more cool stuff you work on, naturally you'll gain fans. You'll have people liking your work. But if you're doing it for that reason, you're totally wrong, right? You're doing it because you want to work in this industry, you want to work on cool products. That, if you accomplish that goal, everything goes after will come on its own. You don't have to worry about it. It all comes naturally, okay? Making good living, having good jobs. It all comes because you have this skill. If you're only doing it because you want to gain fame, then most likely you're not going to make it, okay? Do this because you like doing it, not because of social media, okay? So be slow and patient. So this mentioned numerous times in past design cinema. This will take years to perfect. If you're just starting out, it's going to take maybe 6 months to see some difference, 1 year to see a huge difference, and you might be doing this for 3-4 years until you become very confident. But that is the time it takes. You can't skip this. If we could skip it, every single school on the planet would teach it if there's some kind of secret formula. But there isn't. This is a skill-based job. It's a physical skill-based job. That means you got to practice, right? So there's not even something like, at least in training, you could take drugs. You could take like steroids and get all buff. But but in this industry, you can't do it. I guess photo bash might be the cheat. But in most cases, if you want to learn how to draw, you're gonna have to do the traditional way. Oh, and by the way, I guess you could cheat by tracing. Okay, you could trace this stuff. But if you're doing that, that's pretty much, I guess, tracing is the steroids of this industry. So you could do that. You could draw a pretty nice drawing by tracing something, but it's going to add nothing to you have no skills. You know what I'm saying? It looks nice, but on the outside, but there's nothing underneath it. So don't trace it. This is for yourself, so don't do that, okay? Sketch it. Even if it's a horrible drawing, don't trace it. Okay, remember, good results come first, not speed, okay? So if a sketch takes you a whole day to draw, then fine, it took a whole day. Don't try to do it because it's fast, okay? Don't try to compete with the pros. Okay, so let's run through the steps here. So as we talked about earlier, first stage, get the overall form, okay? So that's this here. And this drawing here is totally probably off. Even if looking here, like my negative space is quite off, right? Because that's besides the point, it's fine, okay? You can see that I marked a very light horizon line here. Okay, similar to where the horizon line is marked here. So that way I kind of know what's up, what's down, where's my eye level at. I tend to do this for pretty much every sketch I do. It doesn't matter if it's man-made or organic. I put a horizon indicator, okay? So big sketch first, don't focus on details. Next, line weight, okay? Exactly what we mentioned earlier. Form, then line weight. So you can see the line weight is adding areas of overlap, right? These are all form overlaps. Under areas, shadows, for example, are all in this here, right? Focal point is going to be here. The focal point is this area here and expand outwards. So next, we have the contour lines and more areas of darker line weight as well as shadow indication come in. So now this sketch is starting to take form. It's almost towards like the final stages here. Remember, we're doing a sketch here. We're not doing a perfect illustration. We're not doing a rendering of this. We're doing a sketch, okay? In my definition, a sketch and a drawing are different things. Okay, the way I like to define it is a drawing is tend to be a little tighter, a sketch is a lot looser. So this here is a sketch. If we make this spend maybe another 3-4 hours on it, maybe even 10 hours, it becomes a drawing, in which, in my opinion, drawing is a lot more tighter. It's now a finished product. It is something that is client showable. A sketch is always like an in progress type of thing, right? So this one here is towards the end of a sketch. Okay, next, final details added in, right? So some of the background indicator stuff, a little bit more line weight. You can see clearly the indication of the focal point, which starts here in the middle and kind of branches out. Oh, branches out. That's a pun right there. As it branches out towards the sides there. Okay, and finally we add some markers. Right, very light gray wash here, and let me run through what tools they are. So of course this is done in Photoshop, but traditionally how this works is pretty much exactly the same. In fact, this technique comes from traditional markers. So I'll show you the tools that I used to use back in the days, right? So to do the actual marker that you see here, I used to use Prismacolor Gray. Okay, the brand's a marker. Now, of course, you don't have to worry about this because you're doing it in Photoshop. But if you do want to try this on paper, it's exactly the same kind of skills. It doesn't matter. In fact, if you want to draw on paper, I encourage it because it's quite cool. So Prisma markers are, I use the warm grays as well as the cool grays. It's up to you. They come in warms and cools. So I generally use them in odds. So if you're going to buy this set, I generally never bought the sets. What I buy is in odds. So what I buy is, say, 10%. Then 30%, 50%, 70, 90, and then black. So here, how come they have like 11? Anyways, maybe they have a 0. So anyways, I buy then the black one. Okay, so let's just put it here, 10, 30, 50, 70, 90, and 100% black. Okay, so that generally, so if you do this, you can save some money, right? So I don't have to buy the 20 and the 40 or whatever, because the difference between 10 and 20 is pretty light. You don't need it. So I wanted like a jump between 10 and 30. So, and I usually bought like a bunch back in the day. It's like a box of 10, 10% would be like a box of 10, and a box of 30, box of 50. And I run through these pretty quick. So actually Photoshop saves you a lot of money because Prismacolor, I think back in the days, it was running about 300 USD a month, just a marker cost. So that's not cheap. And I think that might be the low estimate. I think it's much higher than that because each of these cost, I can't remember, $4 each. So a box of 10 is, we're talking about $40. So 40, right? 3 of these are 120. So this set, you're looking at 240 just to get that. And I'll run through this probably within a week or two. So yeah, that's about right. So each month is about 300 to 400 USD just for markers. So anyways, so that's the gray wash. Now comes the Prismacolor white pencil. So this pencil I used to add highlights. So the next one you'll see, I actually didn't add it here. You'll see in my next sketch here. So I used to add the little highlights using a Prismacolor pencil. And next is gouache. Okay, gouache is a paint with a very fine brush here. This is a kind of a one brush tip. Okay, so gouache, this white in gouache is very, very bright. The paper you buy, in most cases, even if you buy white paper, that white is not 100%. It's a little bit off. It's about a, maybe if you look at here, it's about this number here. It's just almost bright, but it is off just a tiny bit. But if you buy white gouache, this white will actually show off on the paper. Then it makes your paper look like it's gray. It's pretty weird to see actually when you put this white gouache on white paper. You're like, hey, my paper is not 100%, right? So this will show off the tiny highlights that we do last. So let me show you what this looks like on the next one here. So this is kind of the overall sketch, right? Practice that. So let's go back to the timing thing. If this takes you a whole day to do, that's fine. Okay, don't do speed. So here, hey, don't do speed. I'm doing a lot of puns today. Anyways, this sketch here took me about 25 minutes or so to do. So again, go for quality. Don't rush this kind of stuff. A good sketch takes time. Okay, you're not after the speed. You're after the quality. So don't benchmark your speed. Okay, so next one here, I just drew a couple examples. The one I just did, I put it here, and you can see in the middle. I just added a few more. These are all from the references. Here's a tree that was above the two walls, right, that were looking up at it. This thing was awesome. This is one of the sketches over here. Let me see if I can find the rest of that. That was this guy here, I think. Where is it? This one here. Oh, there it is. Look at this thing, right? I think it's a fallen tree. So you can see actually the trunk basically towards into the perspective here. Look how cool this form is, right? So when I look at things like that, I just want to draw it so bad. So let's go back to our examples here. So that's what that was. So here's this one that we just did, right? See the contour line, same thing, line weights. And this will be a nice little page of a sketch. Then you do another one, another one, another one, do hundreds of these, right? Hundreds. I'm not joking here. You gotta do hundreds of these. And you will start getting better and more comfortable with drawing. So let me point out what the Prismacolors are. Right? See the little white marks here? That will be done with the Prismacolor pencil, white, okay, on top of the marker, so it shows up. And notice I'm following the same contour lines. Let me delete that here. I found the same contour as the tree, okay? So I'm not going here and just go cut, 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 right? Carefully done, slow it down, okay? Even for a loose sketch like this, you want to be patient and careful, okay? So you can see all that. So anytime gouache goes in, will be the hottest highlights. For example, maybe here's, I'm sure on YouTube you can't even tell the difference, but in certain areas like here, down here, okay, this will be done if this is traditional with the white gouache. So this will pop out on the white paper, okay? But we use tiny, tiny dots of this gouache. So you don't want to overdo your highlights, you want to do a little bit. So these highlights are actually added in. I can show you the layers actually. Okay, let me see where my line drawings. Here's a line drawing. Okay, let me zoom out here. So here's initial line drawings for all the rest of it. So this whole page took me, I think each one took about anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. So looking about an hour, hour and a half, somewhere there of drawing. And that's me drawing for a long time. So if you're doing this might take you easily a day, maybe 5-6 hours. That's normal. Okay, don't worry about the speed. I have to keep mentioning this because I teach a lot of students, and a lot of students want to rush through this. They think speed somehow makes you better. No, it does not. Good quality makes you better. Okay, slowly build it. So anyways, here's that sketch. And what is this one? This one has nothing on it. Okay. This is a first light gray wash. You might not even show up on YouTube. So this is pretty much like a 10% marker. Here now I'm adding the next one, which is be a 30 to a 50% marker here. I'm turning it on and off so you guys can see the difference. Here comes in the 50 to 70% marker. So you can see to indicate where the branches are versus the rocks. Okay, so that's popped in. And let me just zoom in here so you can see the Prisma white color pencil come in. So here's the pencil, right? So I did it in the exact order I would do it if this is traditionally drawn on paper, okay? Everything's the same process. So I like to do things the traditional way because I learned it that way. So I just treat Photoshop purely as a tool. So I know there's a lot of younger concept artists out there who are completely digital and they use a lot more brushes, tools, and so forth. That's all fine. It doesn't matter. But if you're just starting out, I do recommend just doing everything the most basic way. Don't try out fancy brushes and fancy everything. Just do things the traditional way. Draw it, marker it, a little bit of highlights, you're done. Okay, because page like this looks great. This is fine, and this will help you really get better at this stuff. Okay, so lastly here I'm going to show you guys just a few sketches of that I've done in school as students to teach students. You can see this one here on the left, this little spaceship was done in 2012, right? This is 7 years ago. Okay, we're coming on 8 years now on this drawing, but it still holds up. Okay, a nice line sketch done well will last you a lifetime. You guys can go back and look at Sid Mead's drawings, Frank Frazzetta's drawings from 50, 60, 70 years ago. They still look good today because a good sketch done well will last through the ages. A bad photo bash, a bad speed painting will look horrible, or it looks horrible when you start it, and it'll look even worse when you get better at it and go back and go, holy cow, I can't believe I did that. Okay, a good sketch really will hold up for the entire lifetime. So, and that's why a lot of traditional art directors and guys like myself, or a little bit older, we love sketches because it shows who you are. It shows you the core skills you have. You cannot cheat this stuff unless you're tracing, I guess. But if you're not tracing, you really can't cheat a sketch. The form, the line flow, everything is part of you. Okay, it's very easy to identify who somebody is by their sketches. It gets much harder to identify when you start to go into 3D and everything's rendered. You cannot tell which concept guy did what because the technique is almost the same, right? So sketches are a very raw thing. So here are some examples of just vehicles. Couple more. These are from school days for students, right? So you can see this bug vehicle, just having fun. Sketches really is about expressing yourself. It's about just finding the comfort zone. So these are all the things I like to draw: big bugs and farm vehicles and post-apocalyptic craziness. So I always put bugs and stuff into my designs because I like it. Right? Here's some more organic stuff. Skeleton studies and Dead Space looking dudes. Here's some guys riding some pigs. Right? Here's some made up creatures. Here's some real elephants and rhinos and a made-up rhino thingy, fantasy rhino. Yeah, big turtles. Yeah. Notice I'm choosing subject matters are all a little bit easier, I guess, except for the human. But the human's a skeleton, and then I put loose clothing on it, right? See, this is not body type, so it gets a bit easier because these are things I want students to try out. These are all things that are on the left side of the difficulty bar. Okay. Here I'm showing actually an industry thing to show you how important line drawings are sometimes. So this one goes way back. Look at the dates on this one. This is done in July '03. So this is 16, almost 17 years ago. So this is done for Star Wars Ep 3 for General Grievous. So I had to do a lot of breakdowns for him, showing how his arms break up because he had to hold like 4 lightsabers, right? It's a very complex thing, and this was done for IOM, so that way the modelers there knows how to break this stuff and how to rig it. So it was almost drawn like a medical illustration. So using colors to indicate different parts of his body, and using line drawing to kind of just do it. Nowadays, this is all being done in 3D, I think, but this is when Photoshop was still in the early stages of being used to do digital work. So 16 years ago, that was a long time ago. Anyways, but it still holds up today because line drawing done well, like I repeated a million times already in this episode, line drawing done well will last a lifetime. They'll always look kind of cool. So I actually enjoy looking at some of these sometimes because you don't see this much these days. Everything's so digital now. And this is drawn on paper, by the way. This is not done in Photoshop. This is done on 8.5 by 11 paper. So anyway, so that's that. Okay, what is this one here? All right, so now let's actually start sketching. So let me pause the video here so I can save this, and I'm gonna go through a little bit of my brush settings and just initial things to get you warmed up in Photoshop, all right? All right, so now I'm gonna show you guys some basic setups of what I use to draw digitally, so you can see what tools I'm using and what my brush settings are. Okay, so let me get a blank canvas. Okay, so here's a blank canvas. Okay, let's switch my pen to, let's use black for now. Okay, first let me go over my Wacom settings. Okay, so let me get control panel open here so you guys can see that. All right, so I'm in Windows 10, so it doesn't matter, Windows 10, Mac, whatever you're using, it's all fine. So I'll go to a Wacom tablet so you can see my settings. So I actually leave my tip on right in the middle here, right? So if you find that you're pressing too hard on your pen, you can always scale this one back a little bit to soft. So this will start to pick up the slightest pressure on your tablet. So I just leave mine in the middle. I'm kind of used to it, so it's fine. Notice I'm still using Intuos 3. I noticed some people are asking if I use Cintiq and whatnot. No, I just still use Intuos 3. This thing is about, I think, 10 years old or something. I don't know. But I still just like it. There's nothing wrong with it. If it ain't broke, right, why fix it? So I use 3s everywhere. I use my office, use my home. Everything's a 3. I know the newer Wacoms might be much better, but I don't have any problems with the 3s here. Right, so this one here, I can see here, if I just leave that open, if I just barely press, you can see the lines are sort of coming out. Obviously, you guys cannot see me pressing light or dark, but I'm barely pressing and it's picking it up. Now, if I put this back onto here, if I'm barely pressing, because you can see the cursor is probably moving, but nothing's showing up. So I have to actually press a little bit harder for the lines to show up here. Okay, so this is a total pure personal preference. You have to play with it. I'm just so used to having set on regular, so I could generally go through here. You can see, right? So if I press a little harder, this is the result. Okay. By the way, I'm making this form purely with my elbow, not with my wrist, right? So I'm moving my elbow back and forth, and it just naturally creates this. Okay. So or like things like this. This is just elbow movements. Okay. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. Okay, let's go back here. So that's my Wacom setting. Everything else is all default. Everything is default. Make sure your mapping here is set to force proportions. So I have 2 monitors here. So you can see I'm only forcing it to the left monitor. My right one is just, I don't put my Wacom on it. I get to the right monitor using my mouse. So make sure you have this force. force proportions, because I've seen a lot of students don't have this on, because by default, I believe this is off. I'm not sure about the new drivers, but at least the Intuos 3s, by default, this is actually off. When it's off, it's not proportional to your monitor. So if you have a wide screen, wavecoms are like 16:9, looking at it right now. I think it's a 16:9. So you're going to be really off, and it's going to be awkward drawing it. So make sure that you force proportions. So the wavecom, you might lose a little bit of wavecom space as a result. For example, if this is your screen, right? This is your screen. A wavecom is actually, let me switch color here. A wavecom is 16:9, so this is the surface you're drawing. I'm talking about the old wavecom, yeah? So I'm not sure about what the new ones are. So it's like this. So if you don't force proportions, then the movement's completely awkward. But if you do force it, you're gonna get a area lost on the left and the right. Okay, so you're gonna lose the left and the right, but it's not a big deal. Okay, so let me get rid of that. Next, let's look at my Photoshop settings. So the brush I use, this I'm sure we'll get asked in the comment section, what brush do you use, right? To just keep it the most basic. So I use pretty much two brushes to draw everything I do here. One is the default chalk. So if I make this really big, this is what the brush looks like if I make it really big. This comes with Photoshop, let me make it different color here, okay? This brush came with Photoshop 4 or something. It goes way back. I have this brush set for years. But if you shrink it really small, this is a pixel of 10, if you can see here, okay? At 10 pixels, this brush is pretty nice. It flows pretty well on the page here. So I use this to draw, like all those trees and branches is done either this brush or another one. I can't even tell the difference. They're pretty much the same. So this is one of it. The other one here is this calligraphy brush that also came with Photoshop, probably version 4. So by default, if I make it big, it looks like that. So if I move it, it looks like something like that. Okay, so that's really big. So, but if you shrink it small to a size 10, the line here flows really well, as you can see here. Okay, so these are default brushes. You don't have to download these from the internet. They just comes with Photoshop. You probably go dig through. Maybe it's called legacy brush nowadays. I'm not sure. You have to go dig through and find it. So one's called a chalk. The other one's a calligraphy brush. And I didn't change any of the settings. For example, you go to brush here. Okay, these are all default. I don't change any of this kind of stuff. So like I said, I like to work in default everything. So I'm not, I think the newer generation is all about playing with the coolest tools and the coolest settings and messing, there's all custom settings. For me, I'm just used to default. This has to do with the line of work or the time period I got into the industry, because in the early days, you used to work with other clients' machines. They'll call you in, say for a freelance job, you're in there for a month and they have a machine set up for you and you cannot change you can't change anything, right? Everything's secured. You can't change settings. You can't install software. If you're working for any big companies like Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, they're all the same. So they have a workstation set up with Photoshop and some kind of Wacom, and it's as is. You cannot copy brushes on there. You cannot copy things off of it. It's completely a secure computer. So you get used to just working with whatever the clients give you. So if you're very picky and go, I have to use this brush, well, then you're just causing trouble. The company has to be, okay, well, get their IT down here and they have to like release the rights to it and, blah, 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 blah. So I just got used to working with anything default. So I don't change any settings or anything, because I've been in studios in which the computers are so ancient, because remember, I got into the late 90s, where concept art is not even a thing, or barely a thing, especially in video games. So oftentimes they give me like the crappiest machine that they don't use anymore. Like all the 3D guys get the best machines. So they give you kind of like some random machine, and it's like it's super slow. Photoshop doesn't have anything in it, but you have to do work, right? You cannot be like, oh, my machine is not good, so please give me the best. They'll be like, who is this person, causing us trouble? So that's just me. So you're welcome to try out new settings and do all sorts of fun stuff, but I'm just used to using default everything. Now, if you want to make your own brush and that draws well, like you cannot find the calligraphy brush or this chalk brush, I'll show you how to make a very easy drawing brush. Take the default airbrush, right, which is that. Just shrink this down to nothing, okay? All the settings are the same. Now it makes a beautiful sketch brush. See, I have one here, size 7, okay? So this is the same. This is just the airbrush. So you can see if I blow it up big, it's an airbrush. Shrink it super small down to pretty much 5 to 7 pixels. It's a beautiful sketch brush. And I know a lot of pros in LA that use this brush to draw. Okay, it's just just airbrush. Again, the reason why these guys do it is because we get into a studio and they give you a locked Photoshop. You just take the airbrush, shrink it small, save as new brush, you're good, right? Because they don't let you open up anything. You can't put USB sticks on there or nothing if you're working in high security areas, okay? So anyways, this is if all else fails and the studio don't have any kind of brush I like, I use the default airbrush because it works really well. So, and the reason why I use airbrush is because it flows well. If you use the default hard, which is this one here, right, this is a default hard circle brush that also comes in Photoshop. That's the default hard. This is a default airbrush, right? So if I use this one and shrink it really small, you can see, okay, it's similar. Okay, if I zoom in here, it's similar, but you can see the flow is just not as nice at the end here. So you can see it's a very consistent opacity and drops off very, very fast to none opacity. So versus the airbrush smalls here, that's this one here, the drop off is a little bit better. So it's very slight, but you can feel it when you're on the tablet itself. So I prefer the soft brush. Okay, so that's that. Now to get warmed up, what I often do is let me use my calligraphy brush here. Okay, so the way I like to generally warm up, let me close this as well. If you're gonna sketch, one, get very comfortable in your chair, your seat. Okay, so just relax. If you're wearing kind of jewelry and anything like that, I recommend taking it off. So I'm drawing with my right hand here, so I'm wearing a watch. So if I'm doing this for reals, I'm working, I'll definitely take my watch off because this thing will add a little bit of weight to your wrist. And this is a pretty heavy watch right here as well. So just take it off if you don't need it. All right, so take that off. So if any rings, jewelries, I tend not to have them on as well. So I generally don't wear rings for that reason because it gets in the way of work. So now my entire wrist is free. Now you want to pivot on your elbow. So the way I have my desk set up is that my elbow can always be on the desk. So I don't have if I scoot back here, I'm not working like this in which my elbow is floating off the desk. That's gonna put a lot of pressure onto your wrist and your hands because it's getting all the force onto it. Instead, all the force goes to your elbow. So my weight comes kind of further in on the desk. So I like to work a huge desk as a reason, okay? So that way I'm always very comfortable with my entire body pretty much on the desk and nothing's kind of floaty off. So then early on, just try this, okay? Just practice moving your elbow back and forth, which I'm doing here. I'm getting these nice, slightly curved lines because that's a natural curve in your body, okay? And just kind of go across. I don't want to draw this line. See, if I draw this line with my wrist, this is the result. Okay, let me try again. Oh man, that's hard. Okay, that's my best attempt here to draw it. Yeah, okay. Look at that. That line's horrible. It's wiggly, it's stiff, it has no life to it because I'm relying on the wrist movement and you kind of bumping along, right? Versus a natural curve of your body, you get these nice flowy lines, okay? So that's one way to kind of warm up. Okay, sometimes I just draw wiggly lines, like I'll just go in and just draw, for example, let's draw a random branch. Okay, this way there's no pressure and just warms up. So I do this sometimes before I start a job, is just to warm up with random lines that looks kind of cool, like spiky mountains or whatever. It makes no sense. Whatever this thing is, it makes no sense. It's a way for you to warm up the muscles, like literally warming them up. So that way the cells in there starts to come to life. It knows what your body starts to know what you're trying to do. Okay, similar to before you do a workout, you kind of do some warm up exercises so the muscles heats up. So you're using muscles to draw. So you want your what do you call this? Your biceps, your triceps, and your forearm muscles to start to just warm up. Okay, and that's what I generally do with this kind of stuff. Okay, you don't have to save these. They're not meant for anything. They don't make any sense. So I draw things like that. Back in art center, I used to draw these flower pots to practice ellipse because back in those days, ellipses are probably some of the hardest forms to draw, and you draw a lot of cars, so they have wheels on them. So I used to warm up by doing this kind of stuff. So they look like 3D jars or something, say like this. So I used to have pages and pages of stuff in my sketchbook. And some of my friends would look at it and have, what the heck are you drawing? Like these kind of vases or something. I'm like, dude, this is my warm-up. So I used to just do this all the time. I still do it today. So just do this. Okay, it kind of gives because he works out my my elbow to making these small gesture turns like that. All right, so these are connected. I also do things that are not connected like this. These are single ellipses one at a time. Yep, like that. So I'm not sure how this will work for, like, the reason why I don't like Cintiq is because my elbow floats. I never got used to it. I actually have a few Cintiqs in my house. I just never used it, so I give it out to my teachers and friends and whatnot because I can't get used to it because I'm always floaty. I'm sure I could get used to it, but in what I do nowadays, it's fine. I could just stick with the traditional stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode, running into about an hour and 10 minutes here. So hopefully this is a starting of a good, nice series of just basic things. Let me put this on something interesting to look at. Let's put it on the trees. Okay, so hopefully episode 102 will continue down this line for a while because it's fun for me to kind of refresh myself as well, to do these kind of basic things I used to do in art school. And hopefully this is helping some of you as well who are starting to get into this business. So move in the same line as as difficulty curve, right? So I start with some trees, maybe we'll draw some castles. Eventually, maybe we'll get to the hardest stuff. But human face and stuff probably won't do because we don't have to do those kind of things. But we might do some costume design. For example, we take some characters standing there and we worked out their clothing and so forth. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll deal with it. So we'll definitely cover some perspective things, some vanishing points, cameras, and all that. So a lot of line drawings coming up. And we'll slowly move into digital painting and so forth. Let's take it one step at a time, okay? So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy episode 101, and I look forward to see you guys in episode 102. Any questions, comments, leave below, and please help us spread the word and subscribe to our channel. All right, this is Feng ZHu signing off. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng ZHu speaking, and we are doing a new episode. No more cyberpunk bar exterior. In fact, we're going to do a Q&A episode today where I try to answer the questions we received lately on our YouTube channel. So it's a Thursday afternoon. I got my coffee over here, so let's get started with this. Now, to make things a little less boring so you guys don't stare at this gray screen, I'll try to draw something while I'm at it. And so let's discuss this first, and then once we get into the drawing phase of it, then I'll start getting into your questions. You might have also noticed the format is a little bit different in terms of the camera and the whole setup. The resolution's now at 4K versus the Mac one because I've switched over to the PC now, and hopefully everything worked as planned. This is the first episode I'm recording on this new PC, so I have no idea if it's gonna crash or anything like that. It's on Win 10 right now. Seems pretty stable, but the only thing in here is Photoshop and the recording software. That's it. So hopefully everything works as intended. My lovely little Mac now is serving as my Q&A reading screen to my left here. So it's been it's been demoted into displaying a Word doc. So, but still serving its job nicely here. So what are we gonna draw, right? I haven't drawn for such a long time in terms of line drawing. As I mentioned, concept design these days are moving to 3D, photorealism, photo plating, and so forth. See, I guess the styling of line drawing really is becoming lesser used, unless you're in a studio like Disney, Pixar, and so forth, which they still value line drawings quite a bit, but you're not seeing that as much in terms of in video game development or in film development, especially in films where everything tends to be just photoreal. But that's what I'm gonna draw today. I think it'll be fun. It's a little bit more relaxing for me to do drawings. And then once I get into the groove of that, I will then start answering you guys' questions. Everything's in real time, so I'm not gonna skip anything. We're just gonna go ahead and jump in. So what's the project, right? And for me, one of the most nostalgic projects, and for those who follow me for a long time, you know that I love the Final Fantasy franchise, especially the early ones. My favorites being Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII. I haven't played Final Fantasy after 10, actually. I haven't played any of the new ones. Actually, they're not even new, like 11, 12. 11 was online, right? 12, I didn't even play. I think 13's online or something, 14's online or so forth. I haven't played any of them. So I pretty much stopped at 10, which is the one with the what's that little character? It's got a tail, right? It's got a cartoony version. Or wait, no, 10 is the one with the water ball spits or something like that, whatever it's called. I haven't played it in a long time. 9 was the one with the little guy with the tail, right? 8 is the one with Squirrel, right? The weird named character. And then 7, of course, is a very famous one with Cloud. And 6 being my favorite of all of them. So if you follow me for a long time, I've done some redesigns of some of the designs from those titles. So I thought for this episode, let's do some line drawings, because in the past I've done only paintings of it. So of course, Final Fantasy, the concept artist they have for a long time over there, Yoshitaka Amano. You can look up his work on the internet. I believe he is still doing designs for Square. I'm not 100% positive on that, but he was a huge inspiration for me when I was younger. You might see even some of his influence in my current work, which is a kind of this organic mech, organic, I guess, tech look that I love so much. And I'll try to retain some of that. And the goal for today really is to imagine Square was to reboot Final Fantasy VI. Maybe follow the same storyline, everything, but now it's fully in 3D and done in a much more higher, I guess, higher production value than simply doing a reboot, which they have done. They have done like the iOS versions, the iPhone versions, and so forth. And I couldn't get into it. It looks like they just cartoonized it into like this very like mobile look to it. And that didn't appeal to me, because Final Fantasy VI, the world to me is pretty gritty. You have this industrialization with magic, right? Got the whole bad guy controlling the flow of the energy. And you have these rebels in turn trying to kind of fight against the power, right? So the world is very, very gritty. But the iOS versions just look like cartoon world. It looks so cute and stuff. And I just couldn't get into it. So what I'll try to do today is let's try to retain this look that it was established. Oh man, this was back in the days, 1994, 93, somewhere around there, right? When Final Fantasy VI came out. So I'll try to redesign, and let's see how this goes. Maybe we'll do a few episodes where we draw a bunch of things from this IP. So what if Square was to reboot this, right? What would we do? And now there have been other designs of this mech that came out, right? With was a Terra riding on top of it, right? So, but I'll try to do my own version by melting a little bit of the classic design here with a little bit of my own styling, because as a designer, we also try to inject our own flavors. We simply don't just regurgitate what others have done before, but if it is a reboot, we have to respect the original IP and cannot completely reset it. But something I love about the original concept was that it seems very whimsical. If you look at some of his design, like this balloon here, it's got this really nice I guess Victorian steampunk look to it, mixed with this almost organic bug-like thing, which again is a huge influence for myself. So I'll try to retain as much as that as I can here. This mech, Square has done a 3D version of this for their online version, I believe. But it's been a while since I've seen it, so we'll just do ours off our own reference and design directions. Okay. Let's discuss this design. So we have this kind of T-Rex-like thing. Let's pull up some of that. Let's see, dinosaurs. Okay, here's some Jurassic Park T-Rex. So what I'll do is, let's talk about the design direction. Let's pull up a blank canvas. Let's copy this T-Rex. Boom. So we have this dude. This is from Jurassic Park, I think. Okay, it looks like the Jurassic Park T-Rex. So it's this guy, plus we want something like insects. So I'm doing all this in real time for those who are just watching our channel. So there's gonna be no cutting, no editing. So it's almost like a live stream session here. So whatever you see is what I'm doing right now. What am I looking for? I'm looking for beetles. Okay, so you got these elephant rhino beetles, which look fantastically cool. Well, it's a high-res image. Okay, let's put that in here. Like that dude. And look at that guy. It's awesome. Let's copy and paste them in here. That's the original, so let's put them down in the corner here. That's our IP that we have to follow. Let's put this down here. So we close that. Let's bring this over here as well. Okay, close that. So we have T-Rex plus Beetle, and then we want to throw a little bit of a steampunk mechanism into that. Let me turn these two off. Okay, so we can zoom in a bit. So what else do we want to inject into this? Well, we want to inject a little bit of medieval armor, because this design has quite a bit of that in there, of this beautiful details that comes from armor. So let me go into, where do I keep my armor? Characters. Let's go into armor. Let's get some helmets. Okay, so I have a collection of really cool looking armor stuff. So let's just pull up a few just as an inspiration. Bloop. Please don't crash on me. So recording software is very picky. Sometimes, like your video card has a hiccup or something, it just stops recording. But let's hope it does not. Okay, let's open up this guy. All right, so it's these things plus one more. And that's going to be a little bit of a steampunk look. So what can we get to represent that? Let's look at, let me look at my props here. And typewriter, here we go. This. And also, what is Victorian? Like engines maybe? Let's see, I have organs, which are kind of neat. Let's see, let's pull up like this dude right here. These church organs are so awesome looking. Look at that thing. Okay, and the last one is, let's look at some old engines, right? Some car engines which look so cool with their covers all removed. These are all engines from cars and boats and all sorts of random thing, airplanes. Let's see, what do we have in here? It's like Merlin engines. That's a plane engine right there. That's a Merlin, which is from the Spitfire, I believe. Okay, and I believe, what did the P-51 use? Can't recall, but these are pretty badass looking. Let's pull up a Merlin engine here, which is made by Rolls-Royce. They're known for making their awesome engines. Okay, let's shrink all these down to give us our little what would I do? Our mathematical formula here. Bloop, bloop. Because I know that some of you guys want to talk about some design stuff. I'm not going to talk too deeply in this episode because, again, we're doing a Q&A. So, but I think this will give you a slight insight of at least my thinking process when it comes to design. And this happens to be some of my favorite subject matter, which is I love dinosaurs, I love bugs, I love medieval armor, and I like some mechanical stuff. And I think that's why I love Final Fantasy so much. And I also think why Final Fantasy is such a good IP in terms of fan base. So many people love their artistic style. So I'm being one of those. So that is our problem. That's the problem we're trying to solve. Okay, so the whole world is going to go down this way. I'll try to save this file and let me see, let me save this. So this will be FZD, DC, actually this is just Design Cinema. DC FF6 Ref V01. We'll keep this around, so maybe later if we get into this whole episode of Let's Draw Final Fantasy or something, we'll do some armor designs, some mechs, some airships. They have all sorts of cool stuff, even some towns and so forth. All right, so this is going to be my blank canvas here. Let's save this one as well. So this is not the ref. This is Final Fantasy Concepts. This will be the mech. I'll start with the mech, V01. Okay. To save some time, I am going to use a perspective grid. Where do I keep that sucker? Here we go. I'm doing a prop, so I think the font is way too small. Right now I'm running on 4K now, so the text is probably miniature on YouTube. It might not even read. But I've divided my grids into 2:3:5. So what this is my film ratio done at 2:3:5, which is very close to the current films nowadays. I believe it's like 2:3:9 for most film, 2:3:9:1. You get some other films at 2:6:6. Some of the films we're working on now is 2.66:1 ratio, which is a little bit more wider. But it doesn't matter too much. As long as you're at a widescreen, it's okay. So these are all my 2:3:5s. I got my character grids, which are mostly vertical, because most characters stand more tall than they are wide. Then I have my props. So props are kind of a 4:3 ratio. So because props tend to be in any direction, so I put my props in a 4:3 ratio. And then I have my vertical ratios, which I use for obviously vertical scenes, which doesn't I personally don't do too many verticals because they're hard to control, because most films, especially films, you're shooting at a wide angle or wide format. So therefore your design has to read nicely. In general, most designs are read in wide. You could do pans, you could do tilts and so forth, but if you watch shows like Game of Thrones and so forth, most of their environments fits within a wide format. So at one shot, you don't always have to pan or tilt your camera to capture the design. So I tend to do my designs mostly in film ratio. But since we're doing this thing I'll consider a prop, It is yeah, it's definitely a prop. It's essentially a vehicle. So vehicle is a prop, so it's not a character. So I generally go to my prop category and just find let's find the right grid here. Now I could do this freehand, doesn't really matter, but a grid just saves you a little bit of time, especially during the design phase. That way I don't have to worry about perspective. I don't worry if the thing is correct or not. I got a grid that keeps it about 90% accurate. So I don't have to worry about that part. And less worry means I can focus more on the design. Okay. Now, which grid to use, right? We're talking about a mech here. So the general view, let's talk about this. Let's use a T-Rex as a example. All right, so a T-Rex, a human, I believe is somewhere around here. I'm just guessing here, but probably something like that, right? So now if you look at the eyesight, is it that small? Is T-Rex that big? I think it's T-Rex pretty big, right? I haven't seen a T-Rex skeleton in a long time, but I think it's something like that. Okay, now the eye level to a human, that looks too small to me. Hold on a second. I don't know, I'm just guessing. Okay, I'm guessing. Now that looks too big. Okay, let's just keep our original. Okay, all right, that's a human. So now if you look at it, our line of sight, if we're standing to a T-Rex, is right about here. So we're barely at the knee or the ankle joint of the T-Rex. The knee is actually over here somewhere. That's the ankle, right? So our line of sight is very low to the T-Rex. So we're gonna have to look up to see the upper body. Now for the mech, this thing is gonna be not as big. I'm guessing this guy, if I draw a quick sketch here. If you see me looking to the left, it's because I'm trying to wake up my Mac. It goes to sleep every, I don't know, hold on, 5 minutes or so. All right, let's just do a quick side view sketch here, right? So something like this is the mech. Pardon for the crappy drawing here, okay? So a human who rides on top of it is something like this. Okay, that puts a person right about here. That puts a line of sight here, so I'm gonna have to look up at it. However, this angle, this would be the camera angle that most, I guess, if you are a real life person looking at this mech in real life, this will be the most common view because unless you get onto a ladder, you wouldn't see up here. But since we're doing the early design, I do want to raise this up a little bit. I think I want to raise my point of view up to about here. Let me use a different color. Okay, I want to put my point of view here. So I am stepping on a ladder here and raising my camera to eyesight to take this photo. So therefore, that puts my horizon line somewhere right about here. This will give a slightly unnatural view, but this will sell the product, I believe, a little bit better, being the fact that the top of this mech is pretty important. Now, if you look at the original concept here, these cameras are way above. So this one here, let me put my line here. This one here, the camera is about here. Yeah. This one, the camera is low. This one's really high, this one's really low. This one, the horizon line is about here. So that's this camera here, the first camera we established. Notice you have to look up to see the bottom of the mech, and when you look down, you see the toes, watch. All right? Imagine a human, that's what you'll see. So to look up, you will see everything is above you. So she's looking down on you. Everything here, the perspective-wise, is going away from you. And then that's the middle of your view. And then when you look down, you will see its toes. Versus this one, because we're always above, our horizon line is something about here, I believe. So we look down, we see her going down, we see her seat going down, we see the knee, and we see the leg. So two different cameras. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose almost right between the two. I'm gonna put the H line here for this particular design. So that again goes to about right here. So therefore, I'm going to use a grid that gives me quite a bit of space on the bottom here for the legs, enough of a top, but to put the horizon at this position. So let's save that sucker. Where's my grids? Okay, here we go. Let's see where. So you can see these are two down, right? So this camera here is very close to this camera here. In fact, if I copy and paste this grid here, you can see that even though the original drawing is done by hand, it has perspective in it. Right, the artist here knows their stuff. You can see here, this grid, just by pure luck, fits this one really well. You can see here, this grid, I don't know if you guys can see that clearly here, but check it out. It's almost dead on. Okay, so that's the camera that was used in that case. Let me delete that. I have enough grids pretty much to cover every situation. Like this guy here, horizon's in the middle, so that will make it about, possibly about, let me take a look at the drawing here. It's about this camera. Maybe not as wide, but we could try. Yeah, pretty close. Horizon line is right there. And you can see it matches it pretty well. Horizon line being here. As we look up, you see these lines going perfectly into the angle that it's in. And then its knees follow suit. Now he's taking a step here, so it's going to be slightly misaligned. But that's pretty much the grid that was used for the other one. So now the artist might have used the grid. They just drew it. But when you draw by eye, long as something's in perspective, you can always reverse engineer the camera. There's no way you can get around it. So the camera always exists because it's in 3D. So for ours, we are going to... How long have I been talking? Oh, my Windows drop-down just came down. Okay. I need to get a new keyboard. I could turn off the Windows key. Okay, let's see here. Not that grid. What am I doing? I'm looking at props. Okay, so I need to find a grid in which the horizon line is a little bit higher. And that will put it somewhere around... These are all too low, too low. These are too high, actually. We're looking down. This one's close. This one's pretty close. This one's too high. This one's pretty good. Let's take a look. This one, the horizon line is right here. That's marked by the grid. That gives me a good top, good bottom. Good enough. Let's just use it. All right, so I'm going to paste that sucker in here. Let's close this dude. Let's put this one so we're smaller. Man, this computer is fast in terms of recording design cinema. There's zero lag. Versus the Mac is chugs at this high resolution. Okay, so that's my grid. Let's just call that the grid. Take the opacity down, and we start sketching. Of course, normally I'll get a little bit more references, which I probably should do. Let's just do all this exactly the way I would do it for reels, yeah? Okay, what the heck am I doing? Okay, I want to draw at about 50%, so let's make our grid a little bit bigger. Oh man, when did we start this? We started this about 15 minutes ago. All right, track time here. Okay. Man, make it a little bit bigger. Doop. Boop. How big is that? That's good. Maybe a little bit bigger. Okay. Now, I don't want these flare that this grid has. This grid has a little bit of a wide angle. Let me get a new... Now, you can see here, if I draw a vertical here, if I draw a vertical here, the grid does not match it to that vertical. You can see that it's converging to the bottom. Here as well, it's converging to the bottom, right? So these lines are running this way versus up and down. Now, that's fine to keep, but it just makes my drawing a little bit more difficult because now I've got to worry about vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2, and vanishing point number 3 going down. That makes it a little harder. So what I could do is I could trick the grid or tweak the grid so I don't have too much of a vertical. So what I do is I just draw a few lines here and then go into my skew. And then we're going to skew this so the grid loses the 3 point. And that almost does it. Boink. Close enough, right? We don't have to beat that out. We're doing a sketch anyways. All right, so therefore, there you go. You can see now that the grid lines up to my red lines, which are perfectly vertical. And now there's no more 3 point to worry about. So we just ditch that. And now we can sketch. Save. Okay, so let's start drawing. Let's draw some stuff. All right, let me get a drawing going, and then we will start doing our Q&A. I don't know how many questions or answers we can get to, but we'll start. Let me do a pause on this real quick, just in case. Again, we're on a new computer here, just in case it crashes, we don't lose things. So let me save this while I'll come back to it. All right, Camtasia recorded and nothing crashed. So worst comes to worst, we have 20 minutes of something to put on YouTube. But in any case, let's continue here. So let's start drawing. I am going to switch to a rougher brush. This brush here is my normal drawing brush. You can see it's very fine, very clean. I'm gonna switch over to this kind of chalk brush to do this one. No particular reason, I just wanna draw something a little bit rougher just to free things up a bit. So this is my my chalk brush over here. My grid right now is a little too strong. Let's just reduce that to like 7 or 8% opacity. You can barely see it. And yeah, let's start drawing. Maybe my canvas a little bit bigger. Let's just go to full screen. Let's move these guys over here. Okay, so I'm gonna get the base going first, and then we will start doing the Q&A stuff after that. Okay, what am I doing? Okay, So we have the original design here. I sort of have a good idea of what it is, kind of this bug T-Rex thing, right? So let's just start sketching this out. Let's get a go profile going first. So we want a big head, aggressive looking. I don't have to be super tight right now with the lines. I just want to find my shapes. That's the key here. I have this nice perspective grid to help me find the perspective on the other sides. See, we're gonna put some bug stuff, like for example, all those elephant beetles and rhino beetles and so forth. They have these lovely horns and so forth. We're gonna try to put all that stuff in there. Kind of just find the shape. I'm not even sure what I'm doing with these yet. Maybe we'll finish these in with textures and so forth. But for now, let's just draw them. Get a nice line drawing going. Lots of parts. So I flip my screen a lot when I'm drawing, just to, one, it makes the perspective a little bit easier to check to make sure everything's correct. Two, it makes you see errors much faster. So the T-Rex here, not the T-Rex, the mech here, the nose is pretty important for the front of it because it is a face after all. So now I want to make this a little bit less. Got a person that's going to be sitting up there somewhere. Armor. We'll do a few versions of this, I think. We'll draw, I don't know, 3. 3 is generally a good number to go by. So let's do a seat here. So horizon lines here. Yeah. These are the rhino beetle things, right? So I'm adding my own flavor while retaining some of the old flavor as well from the original. Like this kind of medieval armor look to it. The original one doesn't have any guns either, so. But I think the contrast that the design had, the original 1995 design or Ford design, was that all the magic stuff was all very evil looking, very sharp, very dangerous, very threatening looking. And then all your human good characters in a way were softer. They almost have like this whimsical outfits on. It's almost like some of them look like clowns almost in a way, right? And I think that was the contrast that they were trying to do between the good and the evil. Okay, so this thing's like got some mechanism to control it. Little joystick there. We're gonna put a chair in here. Man, I'm gonna be spending time drawing. I don't know if I can get to my Q&A here, so we'll try. Because this stuff actually takes concentration. This is the hardest part of the design, the process actually. This is the thinking part. Okay, so gotta put a dude in here. For now, it's gonna do a human indicator. We'll design them out later. But for now, just a placeholder. Let's see, is that too big? That looks a little big. Let's shrink them down a bit. Okay, his chest, his spinal cord, right? It's pretty much a skeleton, so I know that in 3D he fits. Shoulders, hip. Okay, hip bone there. See, how should you write this? I'm gonna make him write it almost like a Harley Davidson, like a chopper. So his knee's gonna be there, it's gonna go to the other side, and then he's gonna have a kickstand here. Nice aggressive form here. So that's his knee right here. I only draw him as a skeleton right now, but that gets the position correctly. That's his bottom of his feet. We draw his boot in if we want. That's his boot right there. There's a little shoulder. His knee pads there. Leg goes in. Then his hands. Let's make his hand go a little bit higher, which will look really cool. Other side. All right, this is where the perspective grid helps big time. So something like that. Make that center console a bit more interesting if that's the case. Those are details. We can worry about those later. See, which we don't see at this point. Let me check the original design here. Okay, we got those like bat wings and so forth. Okay, so this is the head. Rhino Beetle, T-Rex, steampunk, and armor. Let's give it a nice... It's pretty fun to go back and draw. Again, I haven't drawn for a long time. Everything we do nowadays. Well, actually, I don't do any design stuff too much these days. All meetings and so forth, working with other designers. But it's really fun to get back to some of this stuff. What's our time? Okay, we're good. But if I don't get the Q&A today, we'll definitely get to it tomorrow. I mean, not tomorrow, the next episode here. Okay, let's find center. Because what I could do is maybe we could get the 3 designed out today so that we have something to work with to clean up. And then during the cleanup phase, then we'll do the Q&A. That'll make it a little bit easier, I think, for my brain to wrap around because I gotta think about things. We'll see. I have no idea. All right, I'm gonna try to put in some of those spheres, like those magical ball things. I'm gonna use one of these suckers for it. Let's see, edit, stroke, the line. Let's give it a 6. Not too heavy. Edit, stroke. Let's give it a 4. Erase some of it out so it's not super perfect. Just warming up here. I'm not even sure this is the right design here, but get started, get something on paper. Copy and paste this. Make another one in the back. Not sure if the position should be there or not. Let me remove that. We'll see. Okay, it's got these bat things, which are really cool. Let's put one there. All right. I love these older designs in which it's just stuff to be fun, just looks nice, Doesn't have to be super military, and I think that's some of the stuff that's in terms of my feeling that some of the more recent video games tend to go down more. It's everything's so serious. You've seen that with Marvel movies as well. It's like everything's sort of serious. They're kind of goofy, just fun for the sake of being fun. Some of that's lost a little bit, in my opinion, in your AAAs these days. Like everything's real, everything has to be serious. I think just some silly designs can be kind of fun once in a while. Okay. These are going to be armor, which will render out eventually, which will look really cool. We'll put the Victorian stuff in here. Little cameras in front. Let's put a little camera ball here. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this in real time because I think now you guys get to see one of these things coming together without any kind of cutting, editing, something doesn't go well that we edit it out and so forth. So it's what you see is what you get. Right, Mac just went to sleep. Let's wake it up so the password doesn't come on. Okay. Although I might not even get to the Q&A stuff. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. If this goes pretty well, then we can always just record another one, maybe tomorrow, if my time allows. So this, of course, recording this real-time stuff is much faster for me, but it still takes time to to do these. So I still need to spend a good, maybe about 2 hours now, I guess, to plan for these. Because even though everything's real time, we're recording 1 hour of it, I still gotta clear the time off. I gotta make sure all my meetings are complete during that time. No one bothers me during that time. No one comes in to request for meetings and so forth, or phone calls. Okay. This one's looking kind of buggy, but it's okay. We'll keep going with it, and we'll do our own little. We'll do one maybe a little bit closer to the dinosaur version as well. So let's see. We'll get on the knees as well. So he's got some cool armor plates going on there. Okay. Because we're still respecting the IP. We're not doing it so different that it's no longer anything related to it. I don't like my helmet design. Gotta make them cooler later. It would be really cool if they rebooted this franchise to be, I mean, not reboot. Actually, how would they do it? I guess it would be HD. Like, you wouldn't want to change the formula, I think, the game. Like, you wouldn't change it into, like, some open world or something like that. Then that's not the same game anymore. I guess it would be still the same gameplay and everything. Turn-based combat and so forth. But upgraded with really good graphics. We'll see how Final Fantasy VII gets treated by the audience, because they're making that right now in terms of a reboot with HD graphics, or actually not just HD, completely redone graphics. We'll see how the audience takes that. Okay, really cool looking knee pad. A little too far. Let's put this guy a little bit more in. Now, T-Rex got a tail to counterbalance. So for us, we're gonna have to add probably some kind of counterweight on the back. Even though this stuff is not real, none of this stuff is real, but we still gotta make sure the animators get their hands on this. Doesn't look so good. When they get their hands on it, that the animation looks believable in terms of distribution of weight. The center, actually this does have to come out a little bit if I want the center to be, oops, what am I doing? Time check, all right. Wow, time is passing by fast, okay. So if I could get at least 3 designs in there before we get into an hour. Well, maybe we'll go over a little bit if we have to. I'm gonna do some ridiculous design here, like something that just comes out really far. Now I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna reduce these guys down so it doesn't compete with it. So doing the total opposite of, like, say, like Metal Gear Max, or what's that game that has Max? Man, the name escapes me right now. It's Titan, is it? Oh, is that Titan? The one from Respawn that has a bunch of mechs running around. Not Titan, that's the Blizzard canceled game. For the life of me, I can't think of the name, but I think it starts with a T, right? The one that's, the second one just came out. Okay. Titanfall, there we go. It does have the Titan in the name. That's what it's called. Okay. Those are more mech-based, military, Terran, I guess would be the word, mechs. So now I'm doing this kind of organic night stuff. All this stuff will be textured. Like in my mind, this stuff will be made out of metal, black metal with gold trimming and so forth. So we'll only see that once we get into the color side of it or texture side of it, which hopefully we could do. That would be kind of cool. Let's make this a little bit higher. This thing here just cool for the sake of being cool. Kind of like when you see on insects, it's really nice little, you know, obviously their defense mechanisms and so forth, but sometimes it's just the coolest shapes for the sake of being cool. Spec is kind of wide. He's a little wide. Actually, I have to shrink him. I have to push him in a bit. Let's push him in. Zoom out a bit. Let's push them to about here. Block my sphere a little bit, but that's fine. Otherwise, it's gonna have like a square looking play on their company name, but it's gonna have a square type of profile or front view, so it doesn't look so good. We still want to have mostly a vertical view, I think, for him. Right here, holding the control panels. Big old knee pads. Boom, boom, boom. I'm trying to draw a little faster here because the head of this design is sort of done. That's the hardest part. Once that's good, then we could speed it up a bit for the other parts. So this part here goes right through, and we have a hollow point right there. All these things will be really fun to detail out later, which we have to do, I think, for these designs. Okay, so knee goes back. Run out of grid here, but we'll have to eyeball the rest of this because we have no more grid. Little chicken feet. It's supposed to be about Q&A, right? The sketch is supposed to just take us into kind of randomness and draw, but now we're starting to get into the design of it. Okay. But it's pretty fun for me. Again, I haven't drawn for such a long time. It kind of feels liberating to sketch something. Okay. Get the back leg going. Still feels a little wide right now, this mech. Let's take a look. Feels too square. It needs to be taller. We could, of course, just stretch a little bit. That will start to mess with my perspective a little bit in terms of the grid, but a little bit off is okay. That'll bring back the verticalness of this mech. Let's make our knees a little bit, make our foot here a little bit wider. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, we'll do a bunch of sketches here, so at least 3, I guess. So we're gonna have some alternates to choose from. This one, the only thing I don't like about this one, which we can still actually tweak, let me try real quick, is that the legs are too close to the body. Feels like this guy should go about here. Mess with this real quick. Or we could fix it on the second one. Let's just leave this one for now. Okay, so what we could do is we could get this guy out of the way. We'll keep the grid. So right now he looks a little bit off-center to me. He needs something in the back. All right, but we'll draw another one. But let me stop the recording just in case that something goes wrong. Let's record this in little micro chunks. Okie dokie, let's get back into the design here. So we have one of these recorded. So this mech I'm not too happy with, but we'll keep it for now. Since let's draw some faster ones. Okay, new one, we'll keep the other one around. All right, let's start with the same grid and let's just draw another one. All right, let me see here. Still like my kind of the T-Rex head look. We'll do a slightly different take on the mouth part here. Draw a little faster. These kind of things with line drawings is that once you warm up, you get to the groove of it, it gets much, much faster. And you can start finding your shapes much faster as well. So I think for this episode, we might not actually get to the Q&A because I'd rather get some good designs out and then we worry about the details next episode, and then we can spend our time then answering questions while we do detailing, because the hard part is done. This is the hardest part of this process. Put an eye thing here. So this is the head of this. So it's nice to have an eye there. So that's the cockpit area. That's the head. Guy sits over here. Now I'm gonna push my body way back. The previous one, the body was way too in the front. So I'm gonna push it back a bit. Start getting that T-Rex look out. Little spine. Let's put our little guy over here. So our guy is somewhere over here. So this guy, maybe we could make him write his writing style. Let's see. He's way above us. So his line, his eyes, something like that. His rib cage. Spinal cord goes down, hits the hips. Okay, so that's sort of how he's going to be riding on this mech here. Still want to put those spheres in there because I love the way they look. Put one there. Put one there. So I'm drawing much faster because I want to get the silhouette first, or get the major designs in, so I'll worry about the details on the next episode. This one, the shape is, I already feel that it's much better than the other one. Okay. Then we could just abandon the other one, perhaps, we'll see. The last thing I want to do is restrict myself this early on in terms of like, oh, this is the design I have to go for, right? Because these drawings, really, if you look at the time it takes to draw one, we're talking about maybe 5-10 minutes a sketch. So if that's the case, I could do a few of these in the time. And then just keep the ones I like. Little still chicken feet. I'm retaining some of the designs from the previous one here as well, because some stuff I like from the other ones. So we'll keep that. For example, the long tail thing I like, but I want to change it so it goes up more like an angle like this. We'll design this out a bit to see what it is. Once I have the shape figured out, then we'll go in there and refine some of this. Other side of that will be around here somewhere. Guy sitting way up there. So unlike the previous episodes, these things will take some time to look nice, right? So that's why we're doing these in real time now. In the previous episodes, we'll stop here somewhere around here, and then we will start cleaning up, and then you'll come back and see, oh, the whole thing is done, So we're not gonna skip any of that this time. That means the first few episodes are gonna look a little rougher as we find our design and shapes. I kind of like this one, it's kind of cool. I'm also going to stretch this guy out a little bit. So it's like that. At this early stage, that's not going to mess with our perspective any much. Let's figure out what this thing is. The angle of this is not quite right. I'm going to make it go slightly like this. It's almost like stuff you see on birds, like the end of their ankle or knee, the opposite. They have these cool shapes going for it. Reduce the head down a little bit. Okay. And really, this is how I design all my stuff. So it might look pretty loose right now, right? But right now, you're trying to capture the form, the major shapes, your major ideas. The details doesn't matter right now. It's the forms. Check our time here. I think we're coming into almost an hour soon. Gives us time to do another sketch. Maybe 2 more. Let me see here. This is number 2. This is number 1. Can't see it. Turn this one around. Kind of cool. Bug bots. Okay. Put the number 1 back so it's on the same grid. Okay. Good. Some energy balls back there. Our knight's gonna be up there. Okay, let's get a third drawing going with this number 2 right now. Do a third. Kind of jamming through this right now. Vertical. Let's do a different body language for this one. We'll keep this one maybe the most dinosaur looking one. We'll see. No idea actually, just sketching. Guy's gonna sit there. Let's check the original concept real quick. All right. So again, I'm going away from this a little bit. I'm keeping the same motif, especially when we finish this. It'll be in probably black metal and then gold trimmings. But we're also adding our own shapes. I'm trying to make this one a little bit more aggressive. You guys can probably also tell that on my third sketch, the forms are coming together much better. It's much faster because you warm up. And I know I'm not doing questions right now yet, but I remember one of the questions being like, how do you get around drawing blocks, right? Where you get creative blocks. The best way through it is to draw, is to actually work on it. So it's easy to go away from it. So like, oh, let's take a walk or play some video games or something like that. But in my own experience, the more you do that, the less likely you're gonna come back to it. So you just work at it until you draw the bad ones out. Drawing a bad drawing is equally as important as getting a good drawing. So that's something to keep in mind when doing this kind of line of work, is that if you're getting nothing that's good, you're still doing something. The worst is getting away from it. At least that's my own view on it. Versus, walking away for a while, say, oh, all these drawings sucks, so I'm gonna not do it for a little bit and do something else, right? So I generally kind of draw through it, work your way through the bad drawings, and you'll find a good one. And that might take you some time, but that's all part of the course. And that's what schools do, right? So our students, they start with bad drawings, and you can't get mad at them for it. You could pick on them for being lazy about it, right? But they're spending time, like you get generally 3 groups of students in most, at least in the school that we run here. You get the ones that are just naturally really, really good at it, probably because they've been drawing for a long time. That's a very small percent of the class. And then you get the majority of the class, which is they're putting a lot of work in there, but the result might not be the best. But you could definitely tell that hours and hours of work went into their homework. And those are the ones who generally do really well, right? Together with the ones that are just naturally pretty good at this kind of stuff. But again, those are like 5 to 10% of the class. And then you get the very small on the other end of the spectrum, the 5 to 10, or just lazy. You could tell they spend 20 minutes on their homework and try to pass it off as 5 hours or so. And that's never going to work. And that type of individual has a hard time succeeding unless they realize what they're doing wrong and correct it in time before it's too late. And it's still possible. But what I'm talking about here is the same thing, is that you have to work through your bad. As long as you're spending time on it, you are doing something correct. Because again, this is a trade skill. This is not something that watching me do a demo, and then you don't do it yourself, somehow you'll get really good at it. It doesn't happen that way. So I wish it was that simple. Wouldn't that be so great? You just go on YouTube, watch some other guy paint something or whatever, and then you suddenly become really good at it. So it doesn't work that way. You have to put practice into it, lots of hours. So, and during that practice, you run into a lot of bad work. You do some hideous paintings, drawings, and so forth. But that's part of the course. Not every piece has to be really good. Failing on pieces are just as fine. And then, of course, don't give up on it. And also, don't worry about what other people think. That's also, I think, especially nowadays with so much social media, out there, and you have to feel the pressure of like putting things on Facebook or whatever. Don't worry about it. Just do whatever you want to do. Have fun at it. It's really important. Don't think what other people's going to think about it, right? Do it for yourself. That's sort of been my thing forever. It's like, I mean, look at these videos. They go out and being viewed by thousands of people, and who cares if you start getting nervous, like, oh no, I gotta make sure that comes out good and so forth. You never get started because there'd be so much pressure, especially working on a movie. You're like, oh man, millions of people look at this stuff, not just thousands, millions. And then they're all gonna have feedback. Some people are gonna hate your design, some are gonna like it. You just do it for yourself. Do it, have fun, make sure your client spec is being followed, have fun doing it in the process. That's what you do. So you gotta work your way through all the negatives, right? So when you're having a creative block, just draw, just do bad work, get the 10, 20, 30 bad pieces out, and you'll see the improvement maybe happen on the 31st. But that's different than, say, you've burned out a little bit, like you've been doing this for us, because sometimes you work crazy hours and you're kind of mentally burned. Now that you could have an excuse definitely to take a break from it because you need to reset your brain a little bit. But that's very different than procrastination, which is, nothing's coming out, so I'm just gonna go do something else. Even though you haven't spent, say, the whole entire day practicing it, you spend an hour practicing, it doesn't come out good, and giving up, that's procrastination. Right. Burnout is you've been spending 24 hours, 35 hours, 40 hours on something, some project, and you're totally burnt from it. Okay, then walk away for a little while and come back to it. That's beneficial to your brain, but that's very different than procrastinating. Okay. This design I'm starting to like. It feels aggressive. It feels like a snake head, dinosaur head, bug all in one. I like it. Actually, blabbering is kind of helping, huh? Maybe I was too serious with the other ones. All right. But before I start getting too much into the Q&A, let's still, no, maybe we can. Let me see. Let me pull up. Let me go over here on my Mac. I just fell asleep because I haven't been touching it. Let's see here. And try to answer some of these. Let's see. All right, looking at some questions here. I have a bunch over here, so I need to kind of distill it down a bit. Let me see what we have here. One of the questions, what does a junior artist do? These are not in any kind of sequence. I'm just seeing whatever is interesting to, or something easy for my brain to answer while I'm drawing. One of the questions here is, what does a junior artist really do? Let me see. Yeah, that's the kind of gist of the question. Well, junior artists, depending on what working at, you're gonna do, in most cases, a lot of labor-intensive type of work, meaning orthos, cleaning up details, drawing repetitive things, and they generally make you do that until you get the styling of the project. Right? It doesn't matter if it's a film or a game; both fall into that category. So, for example, get onto a big IP, you're not going to be doing the main characters. You're not going to be doing the main environments. That's at least in most cases. What they do is they assign you to a more senior designer, and you're working sort of underneath him or her to get the design, and they use that time to really train you on their design language. they're styling their pipeline. So once you're used to it, then they generally hand you off and you can start doing more and more important stuff. So for the first 2-3 years of a junior artist's career, the stuff is sometimes not the most fun, but you have to put in the hours and do it. So yeah, Warthos, turnarounds. If you work on a fantasy game, they might make you do like 7 sets of armor, 7 sets of shields, not even 7, maybe 50, just tons and tons of stuff like that. And you pay your dues. At the same time, it's making you warm up to the project. So by doing 50 sets of armor for a particular game, you're starting to feel its language, its design style, right? What the company likes, what they don't like, right? You start to feel all that stuff out. So. Okay. So it's kind of nice. For some reason, I feel like these legs are all too short. I wonder if I should try something in here. Yeah, maybe that's better, huh? Yeah, that feels a lot better, actually. Feels like the legs are all too short in the previous ones. That's what's making them stubby. All this stuff is rough. Don't have to worry about it. Find the design. I'm gonna go back to the other ones and see if I could fix up the legs a bit. Let's move the whole thing down a bit. Let's see what happens. So beauty of Photoshop, it allows you to do these things really fast. See, does that look good? And we have lots of undos these days, so it makes it easy to mess around with things. Let's see here. That feels better. It's not bad. Let's adjust the other one. Let's make this one bigger. Oops, what did I do? Maybe bend a little bit. That's kind of cool. Right. I was talking about the power of Photoshop, I think, in the previous episode, especially like the warp tool and stuff. Now, I'm not going to use it on this guy because he's mechanical mostly, so his perspective is going to start tweaking out if I start doing that. But if we get to a creature one, maybe we'll do some of that. It'd be kind of fun. But right now, I'm already using the manipulation tools, manipulation block to start changing the design. For some reason, this one just doesn't feel right. It feels like the head is too stubby. Not bad though. This one's also a little stubby. Let's see. Oops. This one's kind of nice. Now, these are pretty rough, so it's fine. We're gonna go and clean them as we get to the next episode here. Okay. Maybe for the next one, we draw a few more. I'm not super happy with these yet. Somehow the forms doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is. Let's try another one. What's our time here? Oh, coming up on almost over an hour, I guess, at this point. Man, time is flying by. But let's see if I can find a good design before I sign off on this one, and then we will find our favorite ones and clean up for the next week. Any other questions in here? Let's see. One is the question is, I'm paraphrasing all these questions, yes, I'm not reading it exactly, but the question basically means which one's more important, drawing the design, like coming up with more design ideas, or doing fundamentals? If I had to pick the two, I'll actually say that fundamentals is more important, because you can have a lot of ideas, but if you can't express it out, it's pretty hard to get that going out. Fundamental doesn't necessarily mean drawing. Depends on how you want to express your ideas. If you want to start using ZBrush because you have really good ideas about creatures and so forth, well, you can start learning ZBrush, which in a way is fundamentals, except it's taking place in 3D. So learn the software first, learn how to use the tools. That's one way to do it. Now, if you want to do line drawings, then you better learn your fundamentals in terms of anatomy, your perspective, and so forth. Once you have that, because ideas, not all ideas are fresh, which I mentioned many, many times. It doesn't have to come from nothing. Most of our ideas come from something. Even this mech we're doing right now, right? It comes from like a T-Rex / insect and so forth. So it's not 100% original. So what you're doing is you're studying from reference materials, you're getting all your stuff from those sources and putting it all together. And if without fundamentals, it's very hard to put that together. So I say definitely spend your time on learning your fundamentals first. And then the design will come natural. Once you start getting into the groove of studying, working off of fundamentals and so forth, you're going to start naturally progressing your design thinking and abilities as well. So they come kind of hand in hand. Or when you're learning fundamentals, choose projects that allow you to design at the same time. So for example, right now I'm doing a mech, right? So do a mech in perspective, maybe keep the design a little bit simple, but still keeping it in perspective, draw all the fundamentals, make sure all that stuff is there. That way you get to do both. Okay. The head of these always come out kind of nice. I just don't like the tail of them. Let's mess with this. It's also because I haven't sketched in such a long time. It's you gotta find that groove, you gotta find those lines. I'm getting much faster, of course, right now on the fourth one here, because it's all kind of sort of coming back. It's kind of like you haven't snowboarded in a long time, or skiing a long time, or rode a bicycle in a long time, right? Bicycle is a little bit easier, but skiing or snowboarding, I don't snowboard, actually, I ski. But it takes a good few minutes to get back into it. Like sometimes you forget how to turn and stuff if you haven't done it for many, many years. So sketching for me is kind of like that as well. Okay. Let's try this simpler. These lines are a little off. It'd be so easy for me to take these offline and spend some time drawing it, but I think that would not be good for you guys because you want to see the whole progress, right? So even if I have to correct it, what I'll do is I just go back and maybe record that as an episode maybe tomorrow, in which we go back and kind of fix some of these up. Because we're not super happy with these designs yet. We'll take a look at all of them in a second. But fear not, we're going to draw through all of them. All right, we're going to work out the good and the bad and all that together. I love the tip of all these, like all the heads I like. I just don't like it when it gets to the body. I don't know what it is. Something about the balance is not quite right. Little bat wings. Maybe it has to do with proportions. Let's mess with that. Maybe the knee thing has to be much bigger. So okay to draw rough like this. It's totally fine. Don't let this kind of stuff stop your design. If you have to draw super rough and super, chunky like this, it's all part of it. We could clean up everything. Photoshop is great for that kind of stuff. So for example, right now, I'm starting to go, oh yeah, maybe that's correct. Finding this giant knee. Let's take an original. The original has a really thick knee as well, which kind of looks really nice. Because something about the other ones doesn't feel right, but now this one's starting to feel correct in terms of the the proportion balance. Yeah, that feels much, much better. There we go. I think what the other ones needed was this kind of pass. And look, it's all just rubbish and scribbly lines and stuff, but this to me is so vital in terms of capturing the forms. Doesn't matter if it's rough. This one feels good in terms of the shapes. I like this one. Please, Camtasia, don't crash, right? Okay, good. Because I want to go back and do it to the other ones as well. Do a little rough pass. Maybe what we needed was just, do a pass like this. I'm gonna give it a little center console, like a little control thing. Person up there. Sort of the head. This all be armor. Little lights. This stuff would be really fun later on to detail out. It's got this kind of crazy looking mouth thing. Yeah, I like where this one's going. It's got some really fun shapes in it. I know it's hard to see right now for you guys, but in my head, I'm starting to see some really fun shapes going in there. And this stage really is doing it for yourself. That's something else I should probably mention. When doing this kind of design, this is all you. This is for yourself. You're trying to find the design. Don't worry what it looks like. It doesn't matter. Right now, I'm kind of showing you guys everything, right? But these are things I don't show clients when I'm doing this. Too rough. Clients be like, what the heck is this? So they'll freak out if you show them something this early, especially if they're not coming from an art background. It's way too early for them to see. So generally what I'm doing this is all for yourself, to find the shapes, find the designs, and I'm doing design cinema to kind of show you guys what happens behind the scenes. Because sometimes you're just only seeing the end result, right? The last part of the drawing with the design that's been already refined in terms of the shapes from a designer. So it makes it look too easy. You're like, wow, how come every design is successful, everything's coming out nice, right? But sometimes behind the scenes, it's not that easy. Otherwise, everybody will be doing this. This is really hard to do stuff. So there are failures behind the scenes. There are things that take a long time. There are shapes that might, take the designer a few hours, maybe a whole day to find, right? And that stuff is kind of left when you're seeing the final product. So right now you're actually seeing really how I think. Like this mag I like. And I took some trial and error, right? We did three designs before this until we found at least this form here, which I'm starting to like. So now that I found this shape, right, even though loose as it is, I can now go back to the other dudes and see if I could beef them up. Let me save this as a V2. Just in case we screw it up, but I like this design a lot. I'm not actually gonna move these guys out to here so I can keep an eye on it. Let me make my canvas a little bit bigger. Oops, lost my color here. Canvas is free in Photoshop, right? It's digital, so that's extended by another 3,000. See, make giant canvases. All right, put that guy over here. This guy's over, I shouldn't move these guys, right? Let me see, okay, good. These guys we don't move, this guy we can move. Okay, we'll put that guy over here somewhere. And let's make a copy of the grid and give it to this guy here. And we'll put him over here somewhere. And then how many do we have? That's a grid. All right, let me organize my layers real quick so we don't get confused and accidentally delete something. Okay, that's one dude there. That's another guy there. Put this last one here. So we need a grid for that guy. Oops, not that. I don't know what that does in Photoshop. Let's say new group. hope it's not recording these system sounds because it's giving me an error. It's making this huge noise, Windows 10 error. Okay. Put that in there. All right. How many do we have? We have like 5. Why do we have 5? I only have 4. I don't get it. What's this one? No, we didn't turn. We do have 5. Oh, I thought I did 4. Okay, that's fine. We have 5. We have 5. Okay. Why is this one so big? Okay, let me see here. We want to turn this one. What's going on here? Oh, this grid got moved. I see. Put it back. Generally over there. Okay, so we have our 5 next. This one being our latest. So now, a lot of them are similar. That's fine. We're warming up. I definitely like this one. Oh, I see. I copy and paste one of them. That's why we only have 4. That's what I thought. Okay. You know what? Just give it that one. We could draw another one on top of it later. We keep the grid around. Okay, let's try to fix some of these up. And then we'll leave it there for this episode. All right, let's save this one. Saved. Let's do something in which the head is actually not pointed down, but pointed this way. I think that could help. Okay, let's just do that straight up. I sort of have it for those guys though. Let's see. This PC is great, so fast. I'm doing these, generally this kind of canvas flipping with all these layers will slow down computers. But so far it's pretty good on this one. Let's get a giant eraser. Time check. All right, we're still good. This headphone's hurting my ears. Okay. Making this more of a dinosaur head. But hopefully you guys are seeing, behind the scenes of what the heck did I just do? Okay, behind the scenes of how this stuff comes together, at least for myself, the design phase of it. Right, rough, loose. It's all fine. That's why I love having that perspective grid. Even though it looks really crappy and messy, that grid is going to come super in handy later for us to help clean all this up. This guy's got a cool cabin design. Let's see here. Apologize for the rough sketching. You guys are going like, whoa, this stuff is like super messy, right? Hopefully this will encourage some of you guys as well. It's like, oh, look, crappy drawings. It's normal. Something you don't see a lot. When I was trying to break into this business a long time ago, in the 90s, right, you couldn't find anything like this. So because the only thing you see, internet was just starting to be around during that time. So in terms of concept art on the internet, it was almost non-existent. And if you do see something, it's always like finished stuff. So it was very hard for me to see what the behind the scenes was like until you went to school, of course, to see that. But I do remember going to Disney quite early on, Disney Animation over at Flower Street in Burma Vista area, right? So I got to see some of the concept designs that was taking place in some of their movies. During that time, Disney was huge. They're kind of huge now, actually, I guess. But back then, there were the Beauty and the Beast, the Lion King days, right? So just huge studio. And so I got lucky and got behind the scenes a little bit and saw some of their concept and actually saw roughs. And I just loved that stuff. I was like, wow, this is how stuff was made. Prior to that, you just had no exposure to that. You had no idea how these designs come about. So hopefully this will also help you guys see a little bit of how things are made as well. So don't get discouraged. very easy to get depressed in this business if you're just learning, right? So, because I was a student once, I remember that feeling. You look at a pro, you're like, how could you achieve that? That goal seems so far away in terms of what a pro could do against what an amateur is doing. So it just seems impossible. But you just gotta hang in there and work at it. Practice and practice and practice. But no magic. That's the one thing I've probably mentioned countless times. There's no magic in this business, unfortunately. There's no tool. There's nothing you can suddenly do and just become like badass at it. And then, all of a sudden every student in the world is hiring you. So it doesn't work that way. You have to put in the hours. Like redo all the legs. These shapes are much cooler. Now I'm warming up as we come almost into more than an hour. So apologize, this episode might run a little long, but I want to get this in a pretty good shape. So if I have time tomorrow, I could revisit this a bit and get some of them to start detailing. And I could do then some Q&A. It's very ad hoc right now. I planned to do Q&A. It's like then we ended up not doing Q&A and ended up just drawing. I like this giant stubby mech right here. Really cool to pull the armor on here. Big fat legs. So not worrying about the details right now, it's just capturing the forms. Details we could do later. Center, center, center. All right, that's where the grid comes into super handy. Let's indicate the other side of the leg. Don't like this thing. Let's get rid of it for now. Maybe we'll put some weapons onto these guys. Would be kind of cool. Boom, boom, boom. Definitely like the stubbier direction that these new mechs are taking. Looks cool. So he's a little stubby. Let's drop him down a little bit to here. Let's move this guy over a little bit. Clear the legs a little bit. So we have a little bit more height underneath the body here. Then we do a counterweight. This one feels pretty cool. I like this guy. Carrying a bunch of stuff on the back of it. Now we're warming up. Took like an hour. Okay. I'm trying to find the shape, just like what I mentioned earlier about like skiing or riding a bike or something like that. Once you start finding that groove, it starts to flow really nice. Your shapes are starting to come together. Your idea starts to come through. And it took me a while, but I'm starting to feel it for these designs now. As messy it is, but as messy as it is, but the core, what's underneath it, is starting to work, at least for me. Feels good. So you guys are seeing me in real time work out a design block in a way, right? Like we started it was kind of blocked. The designs wasn't that great, and you just work through it. So easy to like, oh, let's just stop the recording and just do a new recording, go off and take a break or whatever. But that doesn't solve the problem. In fact, that hurts you because you're losing time on it. Instead, just draw through it. We found it on our what? On our fourth drawing, maybe. I think this guy over here. That's our fourth. That's our fourth drawing, right? That's when we found the design. If I give up, we would have never found that fourth design. But everyone's got their own way of dealing with creative block. So at least for me, it's what always have worked was just sit down and just freaking do it. Just do the work. Okay. So I come from freelancing background. I didn't work in-house much, so I'm always been a freelancer. And as a freelancer, you just have to deliver. You cannot procrastinate because clients pay you per time. So these two are kind of similar to each other, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. Okay, the first one sucks. I hate this guy here. I don't hate this guy, but he doesn't look right. So let's fix this third guy here, which is this guy over here. Let's fix him up a bit. Let's throw him over here. I kind of like him actually. He's not horrible, but the shapes don't work. So let's fix him up as well. Let's start with the head. Maybe we change where the driver is at as well. Let me take a look at the original. This one's a little too rhino beetle. Let's put it back to like a dinosaur head or a T-Rex head. Zoom out a bit. So I'm trying to change the head design for this one. But all these have my own design flavors in it. That's what we do as designers. We bring our own flavors to our projects, right? We're not just regurgitating exactly the way it was. And that's the bet the client has to make when they hire a designer is your design language something that it's sellable? Do other audience members agree with your own taste? That's where some designers are very successful because everything you do is sellable, is marketable. And to find that is very hard to do. It takes experience. There are those, like I mentioned, as our school, like that 5%, everything they draw, the shapes are fun. Those are generally your students are very early, they were exposed to fun shapes and stuff. So they know shapes really well. For others, it takes a while to find that language. And when clients hire you, they're essentially depending on you to come up with that language that hopefully when the designs are modeled up and done in 3D, that others also find it interesting and sellable. Sellable being the key. What time is it? Well, I hope we don't go in 2 hours with this episode. I hope not. If it does, I guess it does. Good thing YouTube does now has zero limit on file sizes and stuff, which is pretty cool. I think it has almost no limit in terms of how long you can record them. Before, for those who are been around YouTube, the early days of YouTube, I think they were limited to what, like 20 minutes or something? I can't remember, but it was really short. So if you look back at their early design cinema, they're all divided into many, many episodes because you could only upload a certain length of video. Only certain people had privilege to upload like 1 hour. I think it was like a big deal back in the days. I think the free account gave us like 20 minutes. I can't recall, but I just remember we had to divide our episodes all down. Nowadays, you're seeing Let's Play video that are like 3 hours long. Okay. Okay, that's a little, this one's kind of close to the OG version. So raise this part down a bit. Almost there, almost there. I think this episode's coming together pretty well here. And in terms of what I have content-wise for next episode, I think it gives me enough confidence to know that we're gonna come up with something kind of fun to draw by our next episode. Which I'll try my best to maybe do tomorrow. I think tomorrow is Friday my time, so if I can, I'll try to record one before the weekend. Because this weekend I have no time going to set, unfortunately. I mean, it's fun, it's fun stuff, but when I'm on set, I can't do any of this stuff. So, and we're doing night shoots. So night shoots are generally something like start around 4 p.m. to set up. 7 o'clock, you have your actors showing up around 7 or 8 to do makeup. And then you actually start shooting around like 9 or 8 or 9 o'clock, and you shoot to about 4 or 5 in the morning. So that's night shoots, and it's pretty tiring stuff. And that's what I'll be doing this weekend. Okay. This guy's kind of cool too. A little bit different from the other ones. Big old legs. Mine's a giant chicken that came out a few days ago on the internet. You know, look up giant chicken, you guys will see a pretty cool video. Actually, I don't think the chicken is actually huge in terms of, it looks like from the video it's the size of a human, but of course we know chickens don't grow that big. So I think it has to do with just the perfect everything in that video. Just look it up, look up giant chicken, you'll see. But I think it has to do with the way the chicken coop was built, you know, the home where he lives, the way the camera was used, the background image, everything just in a perfect perspective in a way that it makes the chicken look like it's the size of a dinosaur. But I think it's a trickery, a vision trickery, you know. Using certain images or proportions, it makes the chicken look like it's huge. But it does look freaking cool. It looks like a T-Rex chicken, which these are starting to look like. This guy's shape is still a little off, but I'll keep them for now. They're all kind of similar, but I don't mind it. Okay, where's my last guy over here? Do I have time to touch him up a bit? Well, not that. Oops, move everything. This guy I don't actually like too much. He looks funny. Delete that. I do like his its bug look in the front. Let's delete the rest, keep the top. This is the first one we started with, I think. Yeah, this is the first one. I do like where the body is at, though. Let's make this guy chunky, too. Let me shrink him down a bit. All my knee joints are kind of similar. I'm going to have to change that during the cleanup phase. But for now, it doesn't matter to me because it's just holding the form. Where'd he go? The original one has these like crazy raptor-like feet. It's almost like these long toes like this. Perspective. Try to rush through this one so we could get the shape down to get it ready for the next episode. Maybe I don't overdo this horn thing. Not sure. Like make it not this big. Okie dokie, let's see. This one's a little weird. Delete it, redraw it. Almost there, almost there. Then we could end this episode. I'll try to follow up again by another episode by tomorrow, so we don't have too much of a downtime between these, so these drawings don't stay like super ugly looking for too long. This guy looks like he should be here. Let's draw it big. Just worry about the silhouette. So you can see how rough sometimes these things get. It's fine. This guy's coming together pretty okay as well. Starting to have some fun shapes. Definitely better than the original ones, I think. I hope. But those are decisions that are the hardest for designers because you're making these critical decisions about where your design's headed. And no one really helps you do those unless you have a very picky art director who's checking on you like every few minutes. But when you're doing your own stuff like this, you don't have anyone to you don't have clients to help you, so you're gonna have to just make the decisions on your own. I hope for that everybody likes it. Let's see here. These guys are a little bit chubbier than the original version, but I think what I could do with that is I could add in some small details to these as I start detailing, such as these things here. This figure is a little big. This guy's pretty cool. I like him now. Feels nice and girthy, kind of like Ed 209 from RoboCop. What time is it? Okay. I think we're good. This might be the longest episode we have done so far, though. But I don't feel like stopping it right now because of, trying to soon, but I want to get all this stuff in a proper shape before we call it quits. I just hope I don't have a bunch of meetings right after this, like everyone's, because I have my door closed and I'm doing these and tell my secretary not to bother me for like an hour or 2 hours. Hopefully nothing important's happening in the office. Okay. So I mentioned, I don't do concept design much anymore these days. It's all meetings, talking with directors or production companies, VFX studios, and all sorts of stuff like that. So meetings, a lot of meetings. With someone, one of the questions, because I scanned over some of the questions briefly, one of it is actually quite interesting, something I haven't seen come up much as a question, which is someone with a lot of experience already. I think someone about the same as mine, about 20 years in the industry, and starting to think like, what's the next step for the career? Because most are trying to get in, but he's been in the industry, or he or she has been in the industry for quite a while, and wondering like, where else do you take your career? And but that's a pretty tricky question to answer because I don't know what your personal interests are. For me, I had the same issue as well, which is once you get in about 10, 15 years, you have done a lot of the stuff already. So to remain, at least for myself, I didn't want to be a concept artist forever. I was always interested in behind the scenes, I guess the bigger aspect of creating a game or a film. So, and to do that, I knew I had to become a producer or some kind of studio owner. Otherwise, as a concept designer, you never gain that level of involvement because it'll only involve you in the very front of some projects. So for me, I had to start companies. I had to actually get and become an entrepreneur for quite a while to gain the experience to work with people that are outside of the concept circle. Otherwise, you're just dealing with concept designers for most of your networking, and they're not going to help you in terms of finding funding and so forth. It's pretty hard when you're dealing with just the group of concept designers. You have to branch out into producers and so forth, the business types essentially. So I did that for quite a while. And that's where I moved my own career. And then using that, gaining the financial understanding of how the site stuff works, then reversing it and using that to form a production studio. So that's where I took my career. So it also depends on what you want to do. If you want to stay within doing concept design, as you get older, then you have to move into, for example, a creative art director position, or a like a studio lead on the visual direction of the product, right? That might be a producer, a visual producer, for example. Someone's in charge, someone's overseeing the art directors, right? But you have to have a lot of experience before a studio allows you to do that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, this job is tricky when you get older due to the fact that it takes a lot of energy to do this line of work, physical energy, that is. Like you have to, stay up many hours, drawing all day. And once you get older, it's harder to maintain that energy. So I am no longer 20 years ago me, where I could draw for 12 hours straight and be totally fine with it. Nowadays, I could still maybe do 6-7 hours of it. Maybe it's okay, but anything over that, it becomes pretty tiring for me. So it's a physical limitation. I try to keep in shape, go to the gym and stuff like that, but you can't fight getting older. So I have to get myself into a different career path knowing that. So anyways, I kind of like where these are going. They're all kind of similar, but hopefully we'll treat it a little bit differently next episode. I really like this dude over here. Let me see here. The first one we did, which was the worst one, I like him the best. That's my number 1. This is my number 2. Of these, actually, let me see here. What's my number 2? That's this guy. Okay, so I like that guy. Let's just narrow them down now. Let's see. My first guy is this dude here. This is my second dude. Let's just get 3. Okay, of these two, hard call. I kind of like this one because of the way the writer is at. He's a little bit different. He's also a lower profile. If you look at their feet positions, kind of cool. This guy essentially have all his parts in the other guys as well. Let's turn them off for a second. And just look at these ones here. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Let's take a look. Can I reverse this without... No, it doesn't let me do that. Okay, let's see. So these are the 3 we have at the end of this episode. I know it took a long time to get here, right? So, but I like where they are. So let's pick this back up tomorrow or the next episode, and we'll start doing some Q&A during that time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed part 1 of our just sketching. It's supposed to be a Q&A, so I only answered like 3 questions, but we'll try to get to that for sure on the next episode. So until then, this is Feng ZHu speaking, and I'll see you in episode 2 of this free sketching Final Fantasy VI thing that we have started. Okay, talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.